Hello, shalom. I am trying this StreamYard on uh, on the road. I tried I tried streaming on YouTube. That didn't work so well. So I'm hoping this works better. If anybody, well, hopefully this is working. Let me see. There we go. Appears that's working. Um, how do I get back there? There I go. So, if anybody with admin rights can come and, oh, actually, you know what? Here, let me try this. How do I? There's that. If anybody with admin rights can come on, that would actually be useful. I am at a rest area between Sacramento and Medford, Oregon, which is where I am headed towards. And I wanted to talk about Amalekites. So we're coming upon Purim, and before Purim, we have Shabbat Zachor, which is the Sabbath on which, not this Sabbath, but next Sabbath will be Shabbat Zachor. And that is the Sabbath on which we read the portion where it says, Milchama Havaya Yad al Keska, Milchama Havaya Ba'amalek Dor. And it tells us to remember Amalek Asher Korcha Bedereth, which, and the literal translation is which happened to you upon the way. And that there is a commandment to remember Amalek and to obliterate the memory of Amalek, right? So, famous questions, common questions. How can you obliterate the memory while you remember? What exactly is it about Amalek? What does it mean, Yad al Keska, right? A hand on the throne of God, Milchama Havaya Ba'amalek. And I was reminded of all this stuff because this morning Gavin did a live stream on the new Randos channel, and Grim Grizz was on there, and it was a pretty nice discussion. And Grizz jokingly said on Twitter that he had a foundation approved chat. And Nate from Grail Country, as he is wont to do, I mean, he is possessed by a demonic spirit. He is possessed by the spirit of Amalek. And I don't just throw that around lightly. You know, it's a serious thing to say that somebody is being satanic. But it's really important to recognize that satanic spirit within us, that spirit of destruction, right? And that's what it means. Remember to obliterate the memory of Amalek, right? This project, this cathedral that I am trying to help build, and I have to say, it's not just my project. That's the important part. Like, today, hopefully, is actually the day when it's going to be incorporated. Next year, a year from now, February 24th, 2024, we are going to have the trip in Israel, um, which Paul Vanderklay is excited about. We discussed it at the estuary last night, right? And what I've tried to be perfectly clear about is I'm not building a church to myself. I am trying to help our community come together to build a cathedral that we can all be members in. And I mean, I have tried everything I can to make it as acceptable to people like Nate as possible. And this is the thing. I think this is how whenever we accuse others of being demonic. Hi, Teo. Please feel free to jump in. We always have to start with the question of, are we the ones who are being demonic, right? You always have to start, and that's the thing about Amalek, right? After the fall, Satan moves within you, right? And that's what Solzhenitsyn, he says the line between good and evil is within each human heart, right? So you always have to start first with the question of, okay, if Satan is manifesting here, is he manifesting in me? And I hope not. I hope not. And the question becomes, how do you know? And I think it's actually really clear here. I mean, if you go and read the Twitter comments, it's really clear how possessed Nate is with his ego and his anarchism and his, I mean, he's the person who's constantly saying, we don't know, but he knows quite clearly. He says that I am unwitting, right? He uses that word, unwitting. It's like, yeah, actually, unwitting is exactly what Nate himself is constantly. He is constantly advocating the unwitting, right? And this is the spirit of Amalek, the Havaya door. This is the hand upon the throne of God, right? I hope I doubt I'm being clear about the spiritual ramifications here. Yesterday, when we were doing the Torah studies, I just realized that the sikha the discourse we were discussing, like, it was so deep and it was making such deep references that it was not explaining, that it became impossible to really understand the answer that was being given at the end. And I'm trying not to do that, right? So the tetragrammaton is the ineffable aspect of being, right? Ehyeh asher be'ehyeh. I am becoming that which I am becoming. And there's a degree, there's a really important way in which Amalek, asher korcha bederech, that chills you on the way, has to be parasitic, right? Like, it's one thing if Nate was doing his own thing, right? And okay, he doesn't want to be he doesn't want to participate. He doesn't want to be a part of what we're doing. I tried to invite him, but it's his freedom to do what he wishes to do is paramount and important. There's a respect for his being, that, and for being in general, right? God created even Nate for a purpose. I don't know what. My famous joke, I love him, but only because God says I have to. And so that's really important. But that's precisely where his hand grabs at the throne of God. And I have to say, the throne of God there is spelled Kes. It's missing an aleph. It's missing the alufo shel olam. It's missing that, the first, the one, right? It's missing God. And so it has to be parasitic. He has to come and say, no, I know better. I am going to stop you, right? It's that anarchism. And then he says that I am creating a spirit of contention, right? And this is always how you can tell the spirit of Amalek manifesting within someone, right? This is postmodernism. This is exactly what the woke always do. Is they're constantly telling you it's impossible to know. It's impossible to know. I know, right? Trust me, I know that you don't know, right? He knows, but I am unwitting, right? I, who actually believe in the possibility of knowing, am the person that doesn't know, but he who doesn't believe in the possibility of knowing does know, right? It's these contradictions and these self-negations. I do. And, I have so many times precisely done exactly that, that I am going to give you 2 bags.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you so much.
You guys have fun.
Thank you. You too.
So Charlie says, oops, that's not what I meant to put on. Okay. Jacob, can't stay to listen, but relax on your vacation. It's actually a fun vacation. It is. But I mean, it's funny that I am on my way up to Olympia where Nate lives, and like it would have been nice to be able to it would have been nice to be able to sit down and in a kumbaya trying to be nice thing, be nice. But this is Amalek, Asher Korcha B'derech. So this, what it means, Asher Korcha B'derech. That so the literal translation is which happens to you upon the way. A more figurative translation, the word kar also means cold, right? Asher karcha b'derech, which made you cool. And the Midrash explains that Amalek, by attacking Israel on its way out of Egypt, was able to cool that fire, was able to remove the awe of it, right? And that is exactly what Nate's tweet was doing. And when you read the rest of the interchange, you see that. That's what he deliberately was doing. And it goes back to exactly what Jordan Peterson talks about with Mephistopheles and the school shooters. It's not enough for them to cease to exist. This is the memory of Amalek, which you have to remember to obliterate, because the entire existence of Amalek is parasitic. It has to be parasitic because it is against existence. And that's the spirit that Nate is embodying, is one of resentment, of I have to destroy this. And you see it, like, for example, whenever things come up with the Daily Wire and what Peterson is doing with the Daily Wire. Nate is a saboteur. And you want to not be engaging in that spirit of contention. You want to not be Eric Weinstein vibes. Lol, he did this during 2020 a lot. Incidentally, his appearance on GRE the other day was mind-blowing. Oh, right. Yeah, he did do these walk and talks. Happy made a friend. It would be nice. It would be nice if we did not have to have a milchama, a war of Amalek upon being in every generation, but we do. uh, reminds me of uh, so there, the Book of Mormon, and Mormons say this a lot. In all things, there must be opposition, um, and there are people who say that, you know, when you're getting flack, you know you're over the target. I don't like that. Um, you know, I especially don't like this idea that uh, if if people from all sides are telling you you're wrong, then you must be right. Like, that's just not right at all. But I guess I would go back to that poem um, that Margaret Thatcher had memorized. Um, you have no foes, you say, right? Sorry is the boast. I don't have it memorized. Maybe I should. But if you're doing anything important, there's Amalek is going to show up. Because if it was if it was non-controversial, if it was easy, if there was no one against it, and it was important, it would have been done already, right? And I haven't downloaded Eric's latest discussion with Rogue. Well, I downloaded it. I haven't listened to it. I don't know. I've been rambling. I don't know if I've been clear. There are people watching. Where are the people watching? How many people are watching? Come on, tell me how many people are watching. Um, mm, 11 people are watching. So somebody jump on. I think I'm gonna jump in the car. Happy has not eaten in 2 days because she doesn't eat when we go on vacation until she gets so hungry, she's famished, and then she eats. So she's also not gonna poop because she hasn't eaten in 2 days. This is pretty beautiful, but I am headed to Medford to meet up with Shane and Caleb, and hopefully with other people along the way. You know who you are. Guests. Yay, Teo.
Hi, JJ.
Hello, Teo.
You all right?
Yes, I am. How are you?
I am good. I just find it hilarious that you're on vacation, but you're still on live stream talking about Amalek.
Is that bad? Happy up, 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 up. Good girl. Yeah, I mean, well, part of it was so Asher Korcha B'derech, right? And so Amalek, the verse says, "Happened to you along the way," right? So it's along the way, you know. Do you understand the how that kind of resonated with me while I am on the way?
Yeah, I see the through line. Hi, Happy. Oh, that is a great shot.
You what?
Sorry, yeah. I got distracted by your dog. I was saying hello to
Oh,
Happy, but
Happy, say hi.
Oh, the dog makes things better.
The dog definitely makes things better. I think I am going to, in fact, if I can figure this out, turn off my video though, so that there we go.
Yeah.
You're not an admin on this channel, are you?
No.
Why are you not an admin? Oh, because I don't have enough admin seats.
Yeah. I remember there was a stream where you had to, was it Grizz you kicked off to make, was it Jason and admin? That was
Grim actually he took himself off as as an admin. That was that was his decision. People who actually do streams, I've been trying to keep. Well, hopefully, I mean, once this foundation gets going, and it is getting going, I mean, I can't wait to see the incorporation papers once they are done, which is supposed to be today, because I'm really wondering how what the how Moses, but our Moses has set this up. But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really excited because I think this is going someplace, and I think it's going someplace good. And then that, like, did you see the Twitter thread with Nate on Twitter?
no, I didn't. I don't think I followed Nate on Twitter. I thought I followed Grizz. I think I do. But no, I did.
If you pull if you pull up Grim Grizz's why is this not switching over to my Bluetooth? Oh well. So if you pull up Grim Grizz's Twitter, he tweeted out, and you should be
Foundation.
able to share screen if you want.
How do I
I
do
don't
that?
know if I know how to. Okay,
Share screen.
so on StreamYard, you let me see if I can figure this out myself. Can somebody? I mean, I'm guessing at least one person is actually on this channel, but if you can jump on, that would be really nice. But on the bottom bar, you have it should be like share screen or something like that. Um, there you go. There's
Jacob's voice getting very robotic.
Yeah, what's he need? Grimm's Twitter?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can grab it.
okay. I will let you guys speak, and I will stop roboting.
You're better now.
Jacob has been muted.
Oh, Taylor, I can add your screen.
Oh, yeah.
Is that good?
Yep. Jacob, are you able to see the screen? I think it's this one.
He's super noisy.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the party.
Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go. You got
Later.
Bye, Jacob.
Have a good one. What's the topic today?
Funny you should ask.
Well, it seems to be Nate's disapproval of the foundation led to this stream, and I'm on the tweet that sparked this off now.
What's the foundation?
Jacob's initiative, I suppose. Being led by Mo, so the Randos United channel and all of the things that comes with it.
Yeah, I think one of the ideas is to take all the different people who are doing streams on Jacob's channel and creating a institution around that, and then having Jacob reclaim his own channel for just his own stuff. So it's Jacob is not in charge of the new institution. It's being offloaded to Mo, a board of directors, and it's in the process of being stood up right now. But there are some dissenting voices who are not super happy with the idea of a institution, which I can sympathize with. But so this Twitter thread, which we are doing a close reading of at the moment, kind of started with I don't know, how would you characterize that? Snarky or potentially, sarcastic or whatever. The foundation approved stream that happened earlier between Grizz and Gavin, and I think that was, I don't know if it was meant to be a joke. I mean, I think it's kind of meant to be a joke. I would just assume, knowing Grim as well, or as little as I do, but as much as I do, I would think that he was, being multi-layered in his tweet. And then Nate says foundation approved, count me out, which I think is probably just a commentary on his position of this new kind of institutional framework around these just chatting streams. And then Jacob just lit into him a bit with the Amalek tweet about about Amalek, and he's on the road, so he's so there was some salience for him in terms of the metaphor to his life, and then that turned into a bit of a back and forth on Twitter, yeah, I have mixed feelings about this, but I would pay $100 to see a photo of Jacob and Nate on the road, raising a glass together with Happy and Nate's pets, if they exist. That photo should exist.
The buddy cop stream that we're all waiting for.
Yeah. So anyway, so then Andrew, you popped on right when Jacob got back in the car and presumably had started having technical difficulties with keeping the stream working for him on the road. I guess he doesn't have Starlink.
This now feels like we're doing a Just Chatting on Jacob's channel again.
Yeah, so now here we are. We've now lost our raison d'etre. I jumped on because I know I have admin privileges and I wanted to make sure I could help him out with his emergency broadcast, but I probably should get back to work. But maybe I'll give it 10 to 15 minutes here and hang out.
So why is Nate against the whole foundation?
That's a good question. I can't speak for Nate, and if Nate's an anarchist, he'll appreciate that. I can't speak for anybody, but I think that speaking for myself, and I'm not against the foundation. I've come a little late anyways to really have much of an opinion on this, but sometimes when you institutionalize things, if you name it, if you give it structure, it can tend to lose some of the charm or character of the initial sort of voluntary, association that spontaneously emerges. And you start to put in policies, procedures, right? Things get structured and bureaucratic by design, and then it becomes less fun for people, or some other people feel threatened by it, or don't feel as free, or become concerned about how things are policed and whether or not they're welcome, or their opinions will be silenced, things like that. At the same time, like, it's not guaranteed to happen. And some people, okay, so I think that also some people are just allergic to institutions by nature because they're anarchists. And so they, I don't have as much, I don't know if I can steelman that argument as strongly. So if there's anybody in the Jacob's channel ecosystem out there lurking, you know who you are, come on and help Andrew understand why this is a bad idea, capital B, capital I. I sometimes I think it's a little goofy, but I also understand like the desire to want to help support the different channels that are coming out of Jacob's original channel, right? You've got the Mark Lefebvre marathons about navigating live patterns, or navigating patterns live, or whatever it is. You got the various like in the weeds Hebrew, Torah studies and whatnot. So I think like having a way for all these different, it's like a network, right? It's like kind of it's the junior Daily Wire. No, maybe that's a bad one, but like that's the only thing I can think of.
I think that's why Nate's got a problem with if it was the Daily Wire.
So I mean, he should have his esoteric, whatever theology or whatever he calls it channel, and just do his thing or not.
So, will Jacob's Just Chatting be on his own channel or on this one?
I think the idea is he will kind of reclaim his channel for his own purposes, and so like some of those, some of the Torah studies, the book club, the Bible study, those things, I think he wants to keep. My understanding from what I think I've heard him say is he wants to keep those in his channel, and then Mark and Grimm and other folks that are doing things can go like, and maybe even Jason, who's kind of leading the Hebrew Bible studies in some sense, or like he's a required attendee. Maybe he'll end up running it there, but like let's say I wanted to do a Noahide.
Last a Bible study, and it was on Jacob's channel. So
yeah. So I think the whole idea of the Randos United channel and the institution is that it provides a framework for other people to come and participate.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny because like Grim Grizz and I know Chad and I think Grim Grizz are all kind of like revolutionaries, and it's funny to call like the whole thing the foundation,
Yeah, it doesn't fit. Right? It's not the right fit for revolutionaries, but but at the same time, the anti-capitalists of the world still have to find a job and buy their food. So, like
someone has to be the institutions.
Yeah,
it's hard to avoid the superstructures or whatever they are.
Yeah.
So my concern, though, I don't know if it's a concern, but one thing I have noticed is if it's on Jacob's channel, it's got like double-digit viewers. If it's in the Randos United channel, we're at low single digits, and it's like the same audience. So I don't know if it's a matter of just people updating other links and alerts and notifications, or people are like, maybe Jacob is like the star of the show. He definitely brings some fire. That doesn't always happen in the same way. yeah, so that's the controversy. I think he wanted Paul Vanderklay to like run it, and Paul refused, and so that was like this whole trope for a while that Paul was fired. And then Mo.
I discovered this.
That's when you discovered it. Yeah, that's about the time I joined in too.
Are you muted? Is that just for me?
Yeah, I can't hear him.
Oh, hopefully he'll be back. I was enjoying his analysis.
Yeah, I don't think Grimgriz and Chad the Alcoholic have gotten off the ground too much yet, because I've just heard about them like a week or so. So, you know.
Hey, Lance.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep.
You're good.
Okay. StreamYard, man. It just cuts out.
Yeah. Just give it some time. I'm sure it'll get off the ground, you know.
Lance, are you the most senior ranking member of this quad group? Like, have you been around the longest? You can speak to what's going on here.
I don't know. I wasn't what they refer to as an OG.
Yeah.
But it's gosh, it's coming up on 3 years now. So close, a little more than 2 years. So yeah, I've been around for a while.
Yeah.
So, and I'm also, and I mean this sincerely, I love Jacob and I love Nate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but one of the things I would say is, well, just a couple of things, which is, if you would think about what the old Randos United channel was, there was a true OG, his name was Jeff. If you were associated with the BOM in any way, you just emailed Jeff and he would just upload your video to Randos. There was no gatekeeping. There was no inviting people to say, well, you get a slot and you get a slot. Like, is that email widely available to everyone who's even associated with the BOM right now? No, right? So there's this sense of trying to create this channel, and that's why, so Grim mentioned it, foundation approved, right? So he was allowed on the channel. So clearly he is, right?
Yeah, right.
And I think at the end of the day, maybe they're going to be cool with anybody and everybody, even if they say things that the foundation disagrees with, right? Because I would just say this about Paul Vanderklay. You know what brought me, what made me, so first off, I didn't find him through Jordan Peterson. I was actually searching for a sermon. I was a weird guy that actually watched his sermons on YouTube. And then a Paul Vanderklay sermon came on and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. But then it clipped up in the algorithm clicked up his first conversation with Grim Grizz. And I saw that conversation. And so I'm not a vocational pastor, but I was a house church pastor. But at any rate, it really impressed me that a pastor, like a vocational CRC pastor, would have a conversation with someone like Grizz. Because again, like there's these interesting things, and there are people that wouldn't do that. I'm like, wow, Paul must be a really cool dude, right? So then I found my way to Bridges of Meaning and so on and so forth. And what I think what I will say what really attracted me to Paul, and I don't know, I could talk to you guys. I liked how he talked about things in really good faith.
Yep.
And we didn't get into this, you're a demon, you're Amalek. I would just say this, and I've talked about this. I don't think that models what Paul's about. And also Paul highlights a lot of different voices.
Yeah.
Who have a lot of different opinions, many things which he might not disagree, like he might not agree with, but he finds it interesting. He just wants to have the conversations. And so I think what they're going to do with the new Randos United, and I think many things that they're going to do with the foundation are going to be great.
Yeah.
I think what some of the OG people would maybe just say is, there was a group of people who felt like we weren't doing anything. We need to start doing things. We need to do more things concrete. And I've voiced my opinion that I think providing a place and a space for people online to watch Paul to say, I want to go somewhere where I can have some conversations with people like that and think through things in that way. And I found my group, and so I don't like I have my group of people, but I'm thinking about the new person, like Teo, like you just came here within the past couple 3 months. Is that right? And I think so. I was hanging out in the BOM when he showed up because a lot of people have left, and there's been people that say, "Oh, they want to move away from that." And I don't care if it's BOM or whatever. I still think Paul needs to have that place for the new person to come in and have conversation, to have that talking going on. So as I would look at it with that. I love Nate, but I have big disagreements with Nate on certain things. I love Jacob, and I have some big disagreements with Jacob on things, but I like them both. So yeah, I saw that on Twitter. I didn't like that, to be honest with you. And this is where I had this conversation with him on Just Chatting, as I said, Jacob, could he be more persuasive and effective if he wasn't such a firebrand all the time? But Jacob knows exactly what he's doing, right? And so here's the deal: like, he really believes that. He believes that Nate is demonic.
I mean,
he wouldn't say it if he didn't believe it. No, and Jacob was not mincing words there. Like and I was watching Here to Be, so he says that, and so I find that regrettable because I know Nate. I don't think he's demonic. Yeah. Do I disagree with Nate on some things? Sure, but. And so I do think that you would. So what would be the question about foundation approved? And yes, there are things about institutions or whatever, but I think the simplest, kind of the harder thing, this thing is like, in the Randos United channel was something that was universal for everyone. Why take that branding and that thing and turn it into where a smaller group of people are going to decide what gets to make that space?
Yeah, well, and I tend to think that if it doesn't work, then there are just going to be people who will leave and do their own thing. And I think that the stack, the technology stack that we have, doesn't require, I think, institutions for being able to do your own thing and I don't know, sell merch, make money, do all the things you want to do. Like you can be a one-man empire, which I think, like Paul, Jacob, I mean, all these characters, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it all gets reduced down to like each personality kind of building their own cult of personality. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all, but just you have to have that organizing principle, right? Like you got to have that brand. And I'm not really sure what the umbrella institution does, except for maybe have shared resources, which, at this stage, with the diffuseness and the size, maybe that will help. But yeah, I will say that I think that Twitter thread's a little regrettable just because like Jacob took it to the streets and like, I don't know if doing that in public is the right move, But I don't also. I think Jacob does things thoughtfully, so he meant to take it to the street.
Well, and like as most things on here for people that have had conversations and know each other over a long period of time and of watching each other, there was more than just like that comment or whatever. So there's a lot that's.
Oh yeah, there's history, right? There's a lot. There's beef. There's a beef there, yeah.
And I'm a consultant, and I've built businesses and did a number. I've tons of nonprofit sort of stuff in ministry, and organize those things. Absolutely, like some organization and trying to get some energy and some synergy or a focus, and to try and do some of the things. Like, I think that makes perfect sense to me. I was on one of the first Just Chattings when this was kind of getting talked about, and Paul was there, and he actually he called my sermon in the video. But I still, and I know people don't agree with me because they'll say things like, well, the BOM needs to go away and blah, 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 blah. And I don't know, the BOM doesn't have to be the only form, but I think I have Paul's ear, and I'm just watching how that's going. There is still not an active place where people, and I guess I'll tell you, I'd ask you this question, because when I first came, let's see if this has been your experience, Teo. When I first came to the BOM, and then I actually was there when the OG started complaining it got too big and was still there for a long time and still saw a lot of really meaningful things were going on. But when I came in, there was a lot of people that were having conversations like you were seeing Paul have. And if I don't show up and hang out in open studios and stuff right now, like there's usually not someone there. And there was that kind of, but there's not a vehicle. But so when you came, were you wanting to come have kind of conversations like you were seeing Paul have, Teo? Like what brought you?
I discovered Paul around about this time, 2020, during the pandemic. And at that time, at the BOM, I was excited to I left a comment on Jordan Peterson and Peugeot conversation saying, where can I find people who speak like this? And the algorithm presented me with Paul, which he used to have the Bridges of Meaning Discord channel in his bio. And I was like, oh, this would be exciting. So I went on it. But I found the text aspect of Discord difficult to navigate. It was too, I couldn't keep up with the conversation. But the voice chat, in my experience, I was expecting the openness and generosity that Paul's channel affords to have to see the same thing. But what I saw was more just the different. It was more contentious than like Paul's one-on-ones when, just conversations and everyone's bringing things to the table. But also, I joined at a time where there were clearly established people that had been speaking to each other for a long time, so they maybe felt more free to be contentious. So I was like, well, this is not what I thought it was. So for a long time after that, I didn't engage on Discord, and then there was the things started kicking off on Jacob's channel. I was like, and I only paid attention because Jacob put the headline PVK has been fired, which I thought was perfect because it gets everyone's attention. It's like, oh, what's going on here? So that's when I discovered the just chatting thing. And then I met Lance, who was like, oh no, there is a space for on Bridges of Meaning for these conversations to still carry on. And that was when I started using Discord again. And that's from then I spend more times on Discord than I did previously. However, the just chatting has been better for me to engage with other people. Like I met Andrew through this. I've not really had much with Jonathan, but I think so the just chatting that Jacob started was like, oh, this is another avenue where I can engage with people. And because it was new, I could be new on it and be like sort of introduce myself on it. So I found the just chatting to be a better funnel for me than Bridges of Meaning because, that's just my experience.
Yeah, I'll certainly say that PVK is really good at like bringing up the question. Like, here's a topic, like PVK is one of the people that introduced me to Sam, and I am very grateful for that because, Sam was one of the people that got me into Jacob and this whole, subset of actually like learning the Torah, I think Jacob is better at giving an answer to PVK, like he'll lay his opinion out, he'll attack your position, and he'll say, or the implicit question is, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to respond to my answer? And I think that's really inviting to discourse in another way, other than PVK's openness. It's like Jacob's setting out the first position. And this whole Randos United channel, I think, is another step towards that discussion. So.
And I think ultimately, because what you talked about, Tayo, were the sorts of conversations, not everyone, but a lot of them, that's what they were. And they still exist today. Like I've been kind of busy lately, but I certainly, I need to be a little more active there. You still have those sorts of conversations. And quite frankly, the quality of the conversations depend on the folks that decide to come in there. Right. And there were periods where there were more aggressive people who wanted to get on there and battle test ideas and tell people they were wrong about
a lot more political I
yeah.
found than on PVK's channel. Yeah.
And part of that is, and I get it, like a lot of the OGs didn't like how when a lot of people came and it changed. And listen, I know how hard it is to keep culture. Like if you're in an organization or anything, the leaders by example drive the culture. And so like, let's say conversations, they were liking it so much, like to some extent, and I'd always said this, like if the OGs who were the true like PVK spirit folks, like if they stay and fight for the culture, then you provide that space. And I think maybe to some extent, like again, I'm not saying that BOM is the vehicle, because the one thing, and I love the just chattings, and I'm an extrovert and a guy who doesn't mind jumping on it, but there are a lot of people who won't, that don't want to come on a YouTube channel. And then the other thing is there are a lot of conversations that you shouldn't have on YouTube, but people need to talk about things. Like maybe my strength is not talking about Heidegger or Nietzsche or that, because I'm just not well read there. But recovery is in my background. But if you're really struggling, if you're a young man struggling with depression or issues like that, or addiction or those sorts of things, well, I can help with those things. And a lot of that stuff, but that comes up like it needs to be in a somewhat private place, and then it ends up usually in a private DM chat, or we exchange phone numbers or something like that. So I still think that there needs to be a space, and I'm just sitting on the sideline, like I'll watch whatever, because I think Paul understands that. I think I do hope that there will be some sort of a place where people can have these conversations, and I'd hope that there are people who are better to have. Like some people want to come in and talk about like they're struggling with Neoplatonism and Socrates and this sort of stuff. And they, I can certainly, we can all kind of have some conversations, but I'm not a philosophy major, nor did I'm not an autodidact that went in and learned all those things. So it'd be cool to have some people that actually have that sort of background that want to kind of have some of those conversations. But yeah, when it just gets into the this denomination versus that denomination versus woke versus this versus that, I mean, one of the things that I liked that I really, really enjoyed for the most part, and I guess I would say that there was a period of time, but most of the times the rooms I'm in, it's been that is I wanted to escape that, because if I want to do that, dude, I have tons of outlets for that. I could go on Twitter and call someone Amalek. No, I'm just kidding. But I can go fight culture war stuff. I could fire up my Facebook account again and actually join Facebook and argue with people. I can get on Twitter and argue with people. I can just bring up politics amongst some, at the office or with friends. I can argue that sort of stuff. But this is a fun space where hopefully you can talk about different things, right?
Yeah, I think it's been. Sorry, Andrew, I'll let you go.
Gotcha. Just a quick side note. A lot of this stuff that we're doing is in reaction to the meaning crisis. And Lance, I know you mentioned that some of our conversations about this stuff do need to be private, like people's backgrounds and their history, and they're dealing with the meaning crisis. But some of those conversations do need to be public. It's how we address the meaning crisis. Like I'm surprised we don't have anything about personal dealings with depression or suicidality or anything, because that's what the culture is going through, and that's what this whole little corner is supposed to be addressing.
I think the name Little Corner it's a little bit of a misnomer, because it's not little. There are so many corners in this little corner that it can almost feel like that's what I make of the Jacob and Nate's back and forth. It's like you've both got your corners, and but I really like Lance, the branding, so to speak, of BOM as a space for private conversation, because there are those conversations that there needs to be a space where there are people that don't want to be on YouTube. I mean, wisely, in my opinion, that don't want to be, put their story online, but still want to participate in what's going on in the little corner and have those conversations, maybe more I think that branding for BOM, it's a better one than just a competition with just chatting.
Right. And I think it's a both and, not an either or. I think that's a great, like, Andrew, what you said. I agree, like, completely. And there always are some people, like, one of the things I've had to learn is to be more discerning, because I will, be willing to share certain things publicly, and you need to have a little more discernment. But at the same time, like with recovery being in my background, I'm pretty honest about certain, like it's not my job to, for example, share certain familial things or whatever, because that's not my thing to share. Right. But if I'm just telling on myself, when people can step out and have and be willing to share aspects of it, like what Grim's talking, there's a way you can talk about things, because other people need to see people, wait a minute. Because, for example, that's what happens in a 12-step meeting. People share their stories, right? They take the mask off and they're sharing their own stories. And you see, wait a minute. I'm not alone, right? And then you get some experience, strength, and hope, because a lot of times people are just sharing they're really struggling in a moment, but then someone else will be able to say, oh, yeah, I've dealt with that, and then share a pretty harrowing story of dealing with, whether it might be suicide or awful things that either happened to them or even that you've done to other people, those sorts of things. And so I think it's kind of a both and. Like, I know there were people that won't come on YouTube, but like people like yourself, Andrew, or whatever, there are people who are brave enough to share their stories and like, that's it. Like the thing that just chatting is I think, and I'll give this up to Jacob. This was his idea to do this. It's brilliant. And I told him this, it was genius. Jacob has some, like, he did this one thing that a lot of people didn't get into, is called post-Platonic, where he was doing music and stuff, where he was trying to kind of show some of the things that we're talking about. So I thought it was really cool. Jacob's got a lot of really, really good ideas.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's cool, you were talking, Lance, about how, like, if you wanted to go find polemics and fights, like, we all know where to find that kind of stuff. But I feel like this crowd is a crowd that, like, also goes and engages with that kind of thing to form their own opinions, right? Like, I think, like, I've gone through lots of changes of mind, of, lots of different beliefs in my life, and none of them came through some kind of a, head-on argument, right? It was me arguing with a position in, over time in my own head, and then in some cases, I think just finding myself, just jumping off the cliff into a leap of faith, and it's like, okay, I'm adopting this position now, and I'll back myself into all the rationale for it later. But I think in this channel, just chatting, but maybe in the larger PVK universe, and I'm not on the Bridges of Meaning discourse, so I don't know much about that, but people tend to, like, want to understand other people's beliefs, and, like, we unpack this stuff. And so we get into the nitty gritty, and we care about, demarcating between denomination A and B, just because we kind of are interested in understanding those differences and mapping the terrain, but not necessarily to try to, like, argue with somebody that, like, that's wrong. I mean, Jacob does it, and that's kind of his, the flavor he brings, which is, I think, is interesting. But I feel like it's a pretty chill group in terms of, like, no one's here. It doesn't seem like anybody is either here to, like, really proselytize or stir the pot too badly. And if they do, I just don't think they find much, like, no one bites. And so they probably don't last very long, because they just sort of think, like, well, I mean, Jacob will just put him in hell in the Discord, but, like, they're not going to survive very long. And so I think that speaks to the culture that exists here, whatever that is. There's some chat going on here.
Well, I think, like, the other thing about public things that I really like, Grim and Chad are our mirrors. Like, their videos are amazing. They'll bring the mirror out and show you this thing that, and if Chad or Grim start, like, putting a mirror on you, you really should stop and look for a second, because they see the thing between the thing behind the thing, and behind I love how they attack their channels, but we have all these sorts of different people playing their roles, and you know, and you know, hey, it's okay to be like I'm a passionate guy, and a lot of times when I get passionate, it kind of comes out with like this would seem like I'm angry, like that's something I've had to learn about myself. I'm like, no, I'm talking fast and I'm raising my voice because I'm excited, and I might be passionately disagreeing with you, but I need that to not, you know, come off as, you know, the you're wrong thing. Like, because I've actually noticed that, because it's one of the transformations I've been going through over the past couple of years. Again, like in it's like Luke Thompson talks about divided man, right? So I lived in a higher power, God of your understanding world, just really easy in 12-step programs. Like I see it work. I don't need to convert or say a name or anything. Like I know that it works, right? And then if you can get out kind of in your Christian world, there becomes this conversion impulse, or this is right or wrong, or, you know, this denomination, because I have what I believe, right? So I know this thing exists where I don't have to put those parameters around it. But one of the things I'm really trying to get to is like, and everyone gets to be themselves. Like you need to be yourself, but telling people they're wrong. No, I've been persuaded something differently than you, but can I 100% say you're wrong? And, you know, I think in fewer instances, I have a lot more things that are opinions that I've been persuaded to believe, right? And that's how I'm going to live and move my life. And I have some very strong held beliefs. So, like, for example, like you mentioned Sam, Andrew. I love Sam, right? And so, I'm clearly, this just throws out, like I've been very heavily persuaded and have a strong intuition towards a Trinitarian theology, right? And Sam is very heavily persuaded and believes in a Unitarian theology. And so I know Sam's sincere, well thought out. He pursues, like I see all this, and I was trying to map these things on. And so like even Sam and I weren't talking, but I had this sense like, oh, I bet Sam sees it this way and this way. And we had a conversation. He's like, yeah, exactly. So I love the fact that I was able to understand Sam better, right? And one of the things that, although I'm heavily persuaded towards Trinitarian, that's predominant view, there are some arguments, Christians, of where it could be a Unitarian sort of a situation, right? So I have to have enough grace towards, and also respect for Sam. Just like, he's not insane. I just disagree with him.
Yeah, so many things came to mind as you were speaking. I don't know if Fawad is still in the chat, but he invited me over to EA Dawa stream that I jumped on, and where you could, the difference between this little corner and the regular religio Christian YouTube and Muslim YouTube as well is that openness and that conversation, wanting to listen. And there is so the being right, telling someone that they're wrong, I really struggle with that. I've been trying to work with Mark and Manuel on their projects, and I had a conversation with them a couple of days ago on Discord, and I came to a point where I was like, oh, you guys think everyone else is truly wrong. Like, they believe that everyone else is right. And I don't know if I'm smart enough or right enough in what I believe to say 100%, yeah, these people are wrong. Because, like you rightly said, Sam exists. Yes, I'm a Trinitarian, but I don't even really know what that means. Well, I've got an idea, and there's a way in my brain where if the Trinity is wrong, then maybe Christianity needs to be looked at. However, Sam exists, is a Christian, probably a better Christian than I, and a Unitarian. So what do I do with that? It would be arrogant of me to just want to, stand on my tenets and stick to my dogma and say, yep, he's a devil, he's the Antichrist, and it should be. But what do we know about truth? What do we know of truth to make that stance? In the chat, Antonio said you don't need to be 100% certain to tell others they're wrong. No. What do you guys make of that?
I mean, I think that's true. But I think to Lance's point, like you need to have, as the philosophers would call it, epistemic humility. Like, you have strong opinions weakly held. As a phrase I like to use.
Well, and I also think, like, in a lot of ways, I try to think I want to be persuasive and effective, right? And the reality is, like, I think with your children, like within a certain circle of sphere, maybe you've been given leadership responsibilities at a job or so on and so forth. There are situations to where, like, if someone's given you permission to speak truth to them, like there are certain men in my life that I said, you don't hold anything back from me. Like, coach me hard, tell me the thing I don't want to hear. Don't hold back. Don't like, hey Lance, you really do this good, but that, like, no, just give it to me straight, because I need to be called out on my BS. Right.
Mhm.
And so I think when we think about this cultural thing, and there are things like, listen, I have very strong opinions on what's going on. Okay. Like, very, very strong opinions of what's going on. But if you think about on a wider context of everything else, like, I think I think we're telling I think we're telling many more times, you need to be really careful. I think we're telling each other we're wrong in situations where actually I've been more persuaded to believe this thing, but I don't know that I should be telling you you're wrong. And I think a lot of sense, just looking at your circle, like, I think we're really quick to go around and tell a whole bunch of other people in a lot of places where it's none of our business that they're wrong. I think we could be, I don't know. I think we could have a spirit of it.
Yeah, I've got to get my laundry. So I'll see you. I'll be back.
Hey, Andrew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lance, are you an admin on this? I forgot.
No.
Okay. I might have to jump.
That's a growth thing for me, because again, it's something I fight to this day, because I want to run and tell everyone they're wrong. And I want to tell you, if you would just do this and this and this, like in the big book, it talks about all the world's an actor on a stage and you're the chief critic and director. Like, trust me, I have this inclination to basically say, you should do this and you're wrong here. And the government's screwing this up. Like, I have all that. And it's a huge fight I have. I'm trying to change that.
I think there are some people though who invite that level of attack. Like, I think it feels like Paul, for instance, right? Like, does a really good job of, although I can't say too many examples other than maybe Jacob, where like he handles those kinds of people well, where he kind of like deflects or kind of judo moves around it, like doesn't like take offense to it, doesn't like engage it head on, like he's not coming back. He's just like, oh, that's interesting, tell me more, right? And so he lets these people who have that proclivity do their stuff, but kind of like makes it work. And so I don't know, maybe like there are some people who are good sparring partners maybe for the more pugnacious.
Yeah, and I think there's a time, like, so for example, I don't take offense. Like, I really love to argue. Like, my mom said I came out of the womb arguing, and I'm a lawyer by trade too, so there's that in me. Like, I will get in and I won't take it personal, and boy, we can go at it. Like, and there are times where that's so, like, when you have a good, like with certain friends, you can just, where you can be yourself and you're not offending them and they know you come, and you can really, like, I love those sorts of things. But I'll tell you, most people don't like that about me. Unbelievable. They didn't like young cocky Lance arguing all the time, telling them they were wrong. You're just wrong. Like all this other stuff, shutting them down, talking over them, not listening. Like, it's amazing. People don't really enjoy. Some people don't enjoy that.
Most people. Yeah.
Would have thought.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I had the same kind of experience growing up. Like, I was much more argumentative and battled more often. I chilled out in my, middle age. So I hear you. I think it's that's why it's nice to have a judge sometimes, right? Like, you're an attorney, Lance, right? Like, you can argue, that way, like, stops the arguments. Eventually it's like, okay, we've all made our cases. Now the judge just gets to decide, and it's just like, great, I'll just take the judgment. I feel like we need judges in these spaces too. Otherwise we just keep going around and around until we're just exhausted and we just, collapse.
To credit, Mark is always climbing on about we need discernment, and I think judges and discernment go hand in hand. Just someone to say, okay, this way. But I think it's on like Lance, I agree with. I feel the same. It's an ongoing battle of. I think I in my teenage years, I remember arguing with my science teacher after after school about what is wrong about evolution versus creation, making just the worst arguments, but he was kind enough and generous enough to, have it out with me. And I think that there is a space where that's needed, where that those friendship, like you mentioned, that you can just spaz out at each other. And I think that's the personality that I think Jacob has, where he will be lovingly argue with you and just tell you all the things that's wrong with you, but not in a personal attack way, in a way to just, that's his way of communicating. But it's repulsive to most people, and unless I've got a friend that's like that, and if you don't know him, you think he's just a mean person, but when you get to know him, you're like, oh, he's actually quite loving. That's his way of, don't go the wrong way, sort of. That's his personality of like, don't go the wrong way, don't go that way, go this way, go that way. And I think working that out within myself has been tricky. Like, when do I speak out? What do I stand on? And I'm at a stage where my faith walk, at least where I'm like, okay, I stand on nothing but Christ. That phrase actually means something now. It's like, okay, I know nothing but Christ. If that, I'm just gonna hold on to this one thing, and that's all I'm here to stand on. Apart from that, it could go either way.
Yeah, and I think again that discernment piece is important, because there are moments to stand up. Like there, and particularly in your personal life, like I think as it relates to your family, and like there are places where you need to call, and then other people are given local, national, or maybe worldwide voices for whatever reason. They're being lifted up, and they're called into a moment. So I'm not saying that you don't ever call anything out, or you don't ever stand on something, or you don't ever argue about something. It's just trying to be finding that sweet spot, is something. I just say for me is something that I'm trying to work on, because I want to have a better connection with people. And if I want to really be persuasive, like if I really care about something, let's say I see something in you and I want to be persuasive, I can piss you off right off the bat and get you to build up your self-defenses and not want to talk to me at all. Or I can maybe try and make some sort of connection and get some trust. Like they always say about leaders, well, you'll follow someone if you know they're for you. Like, is this person really? Because if you know someone's for you, you'll let them lead you hard. But if you don't think that person's for you, you will not follow that person, and you won't trust them. So it's that fine balance. I wish 50-year-old Lance could go back to 20-year-old Lance, and boy, we'd have a nice conversation.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Hey, Michael. I loved your couch potato, Michael.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking of, I mean, I don't know. I guess if it's interesting, because I know I listened to Chad's whole talk with Raj today, and just thinking about, like, for something to be voluntary, and for it really to be voluntary, it kind of requires that somebody not do anything. I mean, that's kind of the proof that it's really voluntary. So yeah, that was the thought behind the Saint couch potato. So now everybody's gone quiet. So I don't know. I only was listening for a few minutes. So
I've been talking to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, does somebody want to fill me in or summarize? I didn't know what the beginning thing.
Well, the video started off. Grim had posted on Twitter. He had a conversation on the new Randos channel, and he said foundation. I guess I'm foundation approved, and he put it in quotes, which then kicked off a comment Nate made. Well, if that's foundation approved or whatever, I don't know part of it. And then Jacob called him Amalek and the demonic, and so that kind of started off this video. And then they came in and you're involved with the foundation, right?
No, so I was, well, I mean, yeah, I was willing to be, but because I'm trying to start my own thing and the foundation may be involved in helping me, Mo, said we're going to move the discussion about that whole thing private, which I was like, okay, that's fine. Because basically I said I was just in a thing, and I'm like, if there's something where you need me to have an opinion, I'll try to come up with one. But I wasn't really paying any. I've been focusing on my own little project, so I wasn't really participating in any of the discussion about what was going on. But so I guess not involved, but it's
Yeah, I've been trying to I think I saw you mention or discuss your project on a stream, and since then I subscribed and paying a bit more attention to your channel. But could you just go a little bit more to more details about?
Yeah, so it's really just it's an idea to have I kind of set it up to say like people who work in building trades. That's what I do, and to set it up as a program in local churches where people who have those skills and work in those jobs can kind of mentor young men, give them an opportunity to learn how to do something that could help them career wise, but also as a discipleship kind of program. And it's not like I'm not trying to like I'm trying to just kind of make it like a seed kind of a program. So like this is I'm going to give some support materials get put together. We've been working on that, and but then people can do take what I do and then run with it in their own environment. And then my plan is eventually to do that here in my city with my church, and smaller, a local thing. So but yeah, so the other thing that I'm almost ready to like kind of launch official or whatever. I'm looking. One thing I want to have as like a regular thing is I want to interview people who do work with their hands, and kind of just have little interviews talking about how that how that relates to their faith journey, and how their faith helps them with their work, and then talking about some other stuff like mentorship, and kind of like a lot of this boy crisis kind of stuff, like what do we do with these young men. And I think there's a lot of people that have a lot of thoughts and concerns about that, and I think that many of these wise men who have avoided a lot of those problems by kind of taking a path working in like a construction trade or something like that, they have a lot of wisdom to share. They may not, but they're not likely to be the people that are going to get up on a soapbox and talk about it. So I want to hopefully get some I have a few people that I know, and some other hopefully other people will kind of be suggested so we can have people talk, because I feel like even just that, to hear that on a regular basis about like what like I do carpentry, and being like, well, hey, this is something that Jesus did, and that really, that means something, and I'm part of something creative, and you have to do it with integrity, and so there's a lot of things where everything that we do matters to God, but we don't talk about a lot of the things we do. So that's just something I want to highlight. So
Yeah, I was on Speak Life, Glenn Scrivener's project. He interviewed UK based evangelist, something is it works with the church, but his whole thing is about how churches sort of, you get your few hours on a Sunday, and most of the days of the week, the people's work vocation are just not paid attention to by the church leaders. And he was he had this project where he'll get pastors and church leaders to go to the congregations where they work, just sit there, just watch them participate in the world and see how their work and their vocation and their faith how they can interlink. And I think that's your project along the same line of getting people or men specifically are wise and just have been diligent in their job to get them to impact some wisdom on some younger people. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. 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 And like so many, I feel like so many of the churches that I've gone to, if pastors are thinking about that, they are, it's kind of like, they're operating on this level of like the business world, or like, the more professional, um, kind of wavelength just in their communication, and like the working class people are, a lot of these people are still going to church faithfully, but they are not being seen and heard and learned from, and their wisdom's being unappreciated. And I think that, those are kind of the people that hold the community together in a lot of ways, um, because if somebody's house has problems, or their car has problems or something, like you need to have some of those people in your church who can, volunteer their time and really help out. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
Chad just has a new
reintegration project.
Chad just has a new video out called what is it called? It's called Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, and the Fatherless Golden Four Ps. So it's a good one, but it touches on that. And one of the things we've been talking about, Michael, is like you talk about, let's just say tradesmen or some of these other sorts of things, which is that's such a more embodied life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It really is. Like, when you hear like Eucharistic living, what is that? It's transforming the things of God into new things, and that's really what carpenters, plumbers, or landscapers, like there's something in that takes you out of that purely like cubicle propositional world or whatever, and you're engaging more in things. And so I think there is I think there's something to people that live lives like that more than just listen. Wisdom comes from all sorts of places. That's one of the wonderful things in 12-step groups, from CEOs to the garbage man. Like your status doesn't exist in that room, and you will just someone who has the lowest status on the rung in society, but because of their wisdom and who they are and how they live in your group, like they get lifted up, and they're called old timers and stuff like that, and I love that. But I think there's something, I love that about calling out these embodied tradesmen up into that role.
Yeah. I mean, well, and that's so just like, because I feel like it's when you start to do one of these things, like if you have no familiarity, this is like one of those things Jordan Peterson talks about. It's like, everybody has a plan to like solve the energy crisis, but no one could tell you how a power plant works or whatever,
Yeah.
Like, so on this grand scale, we have these things where why don't we just do this and that, but we don't. But when you like start looking at the particulars, you're like, oh, this is way more complicated. And then when you meet, so whenever you start doing anything really, and then you get overwhelmed by like, there's so much you have to learn, and it's so much more complicated than you thought. And then you find these people who have been doing it for longer, and they say, oh, no, you're here. Let me show you what to do. This is the next thing you got to do. It's not a big deal. We're going to work through it. And it's interesting because even like, I forget, like, every once in a while I will have somebody who's brand new that doesn't know anything, and I'll be training them, and I realize, oh, there's like a basic like level of understanding that like they don't even have at all. I got to teach them all this like that before I can even start teaching them like what I think is the important particular things of the job. And so then, once you see that, you begin to respect, that they do have wisdom. And I think that, everybody applies somehow like their work to like the rest of their life. You'll hear about like somebody who's like a drill sergeant in the army, and then like how do they raise their kids? It's all like, strict discipline and all this stuff. Or like if somebody's an engineer, that's gonna like affect the way they cook dinner or whatever. And so I think that it's that thing of you have to learn some expertise in some area, and then figuring out how to transfer that to somewhere else, which is, I think applicable to our spiritual lives and our walk with Christ and all that. So when you figure that out, and you figure out like, okay, there are these are real world problems that are solvable, then it makes me think like, okay, some of these other problems that like we come online and talk about for hours and hours and hours may actually have some practical solutions, or some things we could take a step in the right direction and actually solving a problem. But when we keep it at that level of like solving the energy crisis, we're never going to figure out what the next one little thing to do is to make it better.
I think there's a what attracted me to your project was there's clearly a lot of people in this little corner that are tradesmen, and I mean I spent countless hours watching Chad put up the tiles in his basement, and that was just, you know, therapeutic for me. And I think you're building something that makes, because what's the purpose for why are there so many tradesmen? And I think you're building something that might give that a purpose, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, and because, you know, when you're doing that with your hands, your mind is free to listen to something and think about it, and you know, I think honestly, it's like, I know for myself personally, like if somehow somebody wanted to give me enough money that I could quit my job and work this full time, I would still have to be like go into my basement and work on projects while I'm thinking about stuff. And then like, and that's like, you know, because when I write things or whatever, it's like, okay, I work for like 6-7 hours, and then I go sit down in front of the computer and just type it out, and it just comes out. But like without that other process, you know, it's not going to get done. So like it's, you know, it's multitasking, but like it's for ADD people too. You know, you keep your hands busy and then your mind can focus a little better.
Yeah. What the Burn Powers, the anadromist, is he painted his room or something, and he spoke about texture and the importance of texture as a tool to solving the meaning crisis, and I found that interesting.
Well, yeah, that was, you know, because he did a lecture on that a long time ago. So that was even why he was like one of the first guys I kind of stumbled on in here, his talk with Paul. And so then I was like, oh, okay, well, I got to make a nice background for when I do videos. So that's what he was inspirational in that effect. So.
And it looks cool. You got a Fender and a Gibson back there?
Yep. Yeah. Cut some more too. So.
Nice.
PRS.
That one it's actually let me see. This one I made myself.
Ooh,
so
nice.
You can see it's got my name on it. But yeah. So it's like a Rickenbacker copy.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool.
Lance, do you play?
No, I don't. I almost got. I was a saxophone player for a long time, and I've always wanted to get a guitar.
Of the saxophone.
And I almost did, and I almost was going to, but then I know I'll have to spend a bunch of time on it, you know, just because I just know what it would take. But I can read music, and I used to play saxophone by ear, so I know I'll be able to kind of do that stuff, but I've always just wanted to hit electric guitar because I'm totally into guitars. Like I actually watch guitar luthiers. Like that's one of the things I'll chill out and watch, Michael, like this. I like watching guys build guitars. Like I think it's like you talked about watching Chad, you know, I don't know. I think there's some maleness in that. Like, it's just like, that looks awesome.
Why the saxophone? You don't run into many saxophone players.
Just band, like just in America, you know, band started in 5th or 6th grade, and I picked the saxophone, and I was into kind of like jazz sort of stuff. And I was lucky. I went to a not a huge school, so I could do all the things, sports and drama and band and all that stuff.
What do you guys think of Mo putting music on in the background for his streams? Did he stop doing that, or is he still doing that?
Last time I checked, he was still doing it. I love it.
You love it.
Yeah.
We should take a poll.
I need to watch. I haven't watched one yet. I need to go over there and watch one.
Yeah, the Randos United.
I'm gonna head out, but it was great to talk to you guys.
Yes, Michael.
See you, Michael.
Have a good one.
it's so much, one of the things that's new before everyone had all their channels, because people were doing a little bit here and there. But when I first came, people were just starting to do that. And then, they were talking with Paul and, but now as the corner has grown and more people have gotten their channels up and running or getting a lot more content, and you just start seeing that out. Like there was an interesting time where pretty much everyone on the BOM was kind of watching the same things because there wasn't as much. Like Paul was always doing 2 or 3 hours, so that was something. But like it would also be a situation where people would say, let's say there was a particularly good Jordan Peterson video or a particularly good this video, and it seemed like a lot of the people watched it, and so then that would drive like these really interesting conversations because more people had. But like I find myself now, I think there are a lot of people doing a lot of really good things. I just don't have enough time in the day to watch everything.
Yeah, that's why I said the little corner is a bit of a misnomer, because it is not a little. We don't have enough hours to consume just this little corner's content, and what becomes salient to different people can make them think that's what the little corner is all about.
On that topic, I'm going to go into a little tirade.
Let her loose, Andrew.
Yeah.
Bring it.
I think this little corner is being pretty hypocritical. We've all been in reaction to the meaning crisis, and you have Vervaeke trying to build people's wisdom and all of these wisdom traditions and ecology of practices that are popping up to try dealing with people's individual meaning crisis. We should be in dialogue with the meaning crisis. We should not treat it as some amorphous force that we're going to build up these traditions to address. We should be testing these traditions through this little corner by using these traditions. And our complete lack of doing that is showing that we're not building wisdom at all. We're just out here playing with these concepts when our whole origin has been completely forgotten.
So what does that look like to you?
What it looks like to me is people seriously talking about their meaning crisis, whether it be addiction to whatever opioids or alcohol or family problems or depression. We need insider perspectives on that and how to deal with it. Because if we're not dealing with it in the culture and on the internet, it's only being talked about in some conceptual, vague terms, that's not helping anybody. Part of this whole wisdom thing is how it's embodied. It's external, it's cultural, it's I forget the other E's. But if we're only addressing it propositionally on the internet, we're not doing anything. We're becoming part of the problem we're talking about.
Preach, Andrew, preach. Well, so this is my thing. So, the one thing, I'm very lucky that I have all my structures. Like I have good foundational structures outside of this little corner. Mm-hmm. I have places I plug in, whether it be 12 steps groups. I have great mentorships and men in my life that we, back and forth. I also have, I'm very involved in a faith tradition that is very participatory. And so I've got all that stuff. And obviously in my recovery, that's where the rubber hits the road and we rip the masks off and we're getting in the nitty gritty. And I do think, like, to the people who are willing to talk about that live, come back this earlier, Andrew, like, I think that's important. Like Chad tells on himself, personal stories and stuff like that. I mean, you're going to see some of that. That's why I make the case for why I think a place where people can go and talk. Because for me, why I'm here is I'm here for a guy like you, Andrew. If you want to, why does Lance come to why does he hang out in voice chats and everything else? It's not to talk about Nietzsche or this or other stuff or what Vervaeke's 4 Ps are. Although I find that stuff interesting, like I map it onto my world or whatever. But I'm in that room. So a guy like you, Andrew, who's struggling with alcohol or drugs comes in and he starts to get honest. And I'm telling on myself because I'll tell everybody more specific. I have to keep a certain amount of anonymity here because of program stuff, but I'll let it loose. I will tell on myself the things. some of the things I don't want you to know that I've done or have happened to me, those sorts of things, I will do that in a voice chat. And part of the reasons why I do that is I want to model it. Because if someone's having that thing and they go, wait a minute, we're gonna get real in here. Like, yeah, we can get real in here. And then, so that's where I talked about, like with some young men I've had discussions with, that some of and they've gone offline into private chats or to DMs, or we've, even got shared phone numbers. That's where we start talking about the real stuff. And I can share, I can share wisdom, experience, strength, and hope for these things, So for me, so if you want to know why Lance keeps pounding the table for the new person and we have these conversations, I'm hanging out there for those sorts of people. And I'm hanging out there for young men that need to have a place where the mask is off, where there's no bullshit, and we're not preening around because I know this, that, about the other, about this sort of thing, and I'm that smart. But we get real and we talk about those things. That's why I'm here in this little corner.
And I think part of addressing the meaning crisis generally is having those real talks out in the public. Because if you're going to say that addressing the meaning crisis needs to be embodied, then you have to contend with the meaning crisis itself being embodied.
And that's why what you're talking about is, that's why Paul's Randos conversations, right? If you will look at it, where people get to tell their stories. And that is a little bit of, like, people will get into things and they'll share. That's where you're hearing, oh, wait a minute. They're starting to share their story of their struggle, what happened to them, the hurts they had, what took them away, the darkness, so to speak. And then, and people hear that person tell that story. And a lot of them will then say, and then this happened. Right. So like the model in 12-step groups is you share your experience, strength, and hope. And what you do is you tell someone what it was like. What was my meaning crisis? What was it like when I was there? When I was struggling with addictions, whatever. What happened? What was the thing that changed that took you out of this hole you were in? And then what it's like now. So you can give people kind of a journey. Jess calls it the U-shaped journey. Like, so, here's this thing. I find myself in this pit. I cleaned my room. I did this stuff, whatever, right? And then I find myself on the other side. So that's why I think Andrew, I think that's one of the things about Paul's, some of his Randos conversations are really good, where people are sharing their personal struggle and difficulty in the meaning crisis. Preach, Andrew. Look at this young guy with all this wisdom.
I think there's an arena problem as well, because I remember when I turned on the camera to record a potential YouTube video, and all I ended up saying was just the instant I turned on the camera, the way I vocalize my thoughts changed, because now there are all of this subconscious things, like, who am I speaking to? Where are they? What are they seeing when they see me? And all of this, games we play with ourselves. And the arena of YouTube has been clearly beneficial to everyone here, but it's also limited. And embodying the meaning crisis, to me, happens in real life, in estuaries, if you will. It's like meeting people in real life, wrestling with people in real life with their problems. It's a better avenue, I think. Although you are completely right, those conversations do need to be talked about online. But I don't know if having those conversations, if everyone's open to having this conversation online. However, in the spirit of practice what we're preaching, I would be happy to have a conversation with myself, you, and Lance, where we just talk through our meaning crisis and just express. I practice what you're preaching, Andres. Like, if there are people that are willing, they should be doing it, and I'm willing, Lance is willing, and so are you. So I think if we can get together and just embody the practice, to show what it is that you're talking about, where we just dive into our stories.
I get what you're saying. I think part of the problem is that we're still dealing with it on like individual stories. We're still saying, what's your particular meaning crisis? What's your particular meaning crisis? And how did you solve it through this little corner? What we should be doing is, what are aspects of the meaning crisis generally? Like, let's get into depression. Let's get into addiction, right? Just have a whole video on that. And not just propositionally, but experientially, right? Using this these whole ideas of embodied external cognition. I think because all these stories are just propositional or perspectival once more. You have to, this is where I'm going to be very controversial. You have to give an example of a suicidal thought and how you deal with it live on camera. Otherwise, we're not going to reach suicidal people.
Well, I think one of the things you're talking, which we can do here, Andrew, which is, I think there are people that will have those conversations. You know, and so I hear what you're saying, which is with respect to that, I think there are people that will have those types of conversations. And not everyone's ready to, and that's okay too. I mean, it's okay to not put that on Front Street, you know, and there are other, like, anonymity is an important thing in certain 12-step groups. And the reason is some of the things you share might harm you in your real life. Like you might get fired or, you know, those sorts of things. So you got to have, you know, there needs to be some places where you can do that. So no, I think that is important. And then the other thing that I think I've seen a lot of people do this, because you hear what happens to them after they come here and they do this, is like, we're all over the place, all over the globe, small towns, you know, some people are in the boondocks, some people are big cities, is that hopefully you take some of these things and you get transformed and you're equipped with some things, and hopefully you're getting out and you're in different, like you're getting off the screen and you are actually engaging in, you know, it could be church, it could be, you know, like if, you know, 12-step recovery groups or just other community things. And then you're taking this out. And then when you see someone like in real life having these things, hopefully you have some tools and you've got some things that you actually can start, you know, engaging with people, you know, right there in your real life. Because I do this for one thing, but the other thing is, like, I have taken a lot of things out of here that I've then mapped onto my spiritual program that are making me a better man, you know, that are like I'm grabbing, I try to grab tools. I want to see if it's going to work. Like if it's not something I'm going to use, it's going to change my life, you know, then, you know, it's not much use to me. So, but I think that's important. And I don't know, Mo just came on here right now. That would be something that would sound like great for randos or whatever, that if there was some time that was set forth that people really want to get in and do exactly what you're talking about, Andrew.
You know, it's interesting. I actually jumped on because I was listening to the conversation, and it reminded me with actually a conversation I had yesterday with somebody about what I'm trying to do with this little organization, this little corner, and that to a certain degree, it's not necessarily the main focus, but it's the secondary focus. And part of it comes out of a conversation I had a couple weeks ago with Tayo, the idea of embodiment, that the end goal needs to be embodied. Like, I feel like a lot of people jump into the virtual world, whether it's this little corner or any other virtual world, because they're having trouble in the real world, in the embodied world. And typically it's having trouble with some form of intimacy, knowing other people deeply, because it's hurt them at some point in some way. And so to get to know people on the internet, it's safer. I can't be physically hurt and I can run away at any time. But the last thing we want to do is to provide an environment where people can stay here indefinitely and never go back to the real world. But like you were saying, you want to equip them to kind of do what we're doing. We take these conversations and then we go back to our real world, our embodied lives, and say, okay, how can I utilize this information to affect the real intimate relationships that I have, or the ones that have been damaged that we've lost and maybe we can bring back again. But that's a big part of my goal is, okay, we have this big, huge group of people in this little corner. They're all kind of here. And there's probably a lot of them that are really struggling to figure out how to embody that. And so how can we even provide events, provide opportunities for them to embody it, to embody real safe intimacy, if that makes sense.
I think that the meaning crisis is embodied. I think that dealing with the meaning crisis is not yet embodied. We're talking a lot about traditions and how different practices have dealt with it in the past. We're gonna have to start evaluating those traditions through embodiment.
Mark and Manuel speak in similar tones to what you do. I think you're right. The meaning crisis is embodied. The solution isn't. And Mark make comments on Viveka's title for his series, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. He said it should be Awakening to the Meaning Crisis. And I think is right. I think this little corner spends a lot of time talking about the awakening to the meaning crisis, and not enough about awakening from the meaning crisis, because the from will require you to have tell us of where you're going to. And what I think you're saying is there needs to be traditions, embodied traditions, and I think there are in this little corner, and just not vocalized, because everyone was really excited when Raj came into the corner. Everyone wanted to have a conversation with them, and I think that was because there's another new tradition embodied in someone that's embodying a tradition that was a solution to the meaning crisis. So we've got people popping up here and there that are embodying different traditions. I mean, we're on I think all Christians on a channel of of a Jewish sort of kind of Orthodox. Yeah, so there are people embodying traditions that are finding solutions to the meaning crisis. I think go on.
I don't think it should just be pointing towards traditions. I think our traditions should be aware of the meaning crisis. Like, you look at certain traditions in the past, like Christianity tells you that if you commit suicide, you're going to you're going to hell, right? Like, Dante places them in the third circle of hell. And that whole legalistic way of looking at things is not going to address the meaning crisis. And whatever place we here in the little corner have with our traditions should be addressed towards how these traditions, how these embodied practices can address the meaning crisis, the embodied nature of the meaning crisis. We're kind of in a weird space where we're saying that we're proposing that these traditions can address the meaning crisis, when we should be embodying traditions addressing the meaning crisis.
Well, I think the tricky thing about that is one thing that we have an abundance of now that hasn't existed before is, especially in the first world, is escapism. We can escape. Like, when we talk about traditions, like the old traditions, to a certain degree are counting on the fact that you can't get away. And that to try to get away is a lot more risky than to stay and deal with the traditions, especially for young people, because young people don't always understand traditions, especially in that 13 to 16-year-old, the early adolescence. They can't even think about the future very well. And so to tell them, no, this is going to work. Well, I don't see it working right now. I'm not going to give it a chance. I mean, I was very much that way. You talk to me about any kind of religious practice, liturgy, confession, all that stuff. That's white people stuff. Even though there's probably a lot more non-whites doing it around the world, that was just my West Side mentality. I mean, it was a youthful mentality until I came around later because there was a pretty girl telling me I should. And because I was dating her for a couple years, I gave some of these practices a couple years.
Now that's embodied.
But you start to realize, hey, man, there's something to this. And it's so easy to run away from that. Oh, this is uncomfortable. And it's like, how do we entice people to stick with certain things long enough? And that is a really difficult thing to wrestle with. I mean, I was a teacher for a long time working with young people. And so I saw some of these guys wrestling with depression. I've had students kill themselves, kill other people. And it's really sad to watch. It's really sad to be an adult in their lives that they do seem to enjoy being around, and like watching them go down these paths and like wondering, okay, how the hell do I help this person? How do I show them something that every other intimate relationship in their life is pushing them away from?
Mm-hmm. I think you're right in saying that a lot of people have a certain, I don't know if animosity is the right word, like nervousness about going towards these traditions. That is where the culture is at. But we have to wrestle with that. We have to say that if you're not going to go to these traditions with embodied practices, we're going to help out psychologists and psychiatrists and seeing how this little corner can help deal with the meaning crisis. We have to meet the culture where it's at. We can't just say that these traditions are good and they're going to help you embody or deal with the meaning crisis, and it's up to you. We have to go out.
Yes, and so I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. But the difficult part is that that's a huge responsibility.
Yes.
Like, and so I try to do that in my life. I'm as a pastor and as a father and as a family member to a lot of people, but I can only do that with a limited people because there's such a high cost to it. Yeah. Like I was counseling this couple that really close to me through trying to get them away from divorce, and one of them was struggling with alcoholism. And the amount of time for just that one couple that I had to, put out in terms of being there, if things were getting close to violent, that there is so much to give. And then, okay, even if I'm willing to give that, well, how do I decide which one? I mean, this was the big thing during COVID. I had like 4 or 5 really close friends that were going through really tragic divorces and many involving substance abuse. And I have my own kids and wife that I got to take care of. It's like, well, how do I decide which one to like be there for? And that's where it's difficult, because it's like we can be on here for an hour or two, but to drive over to a close family or friend and be there for 2 hours, not knowing when that's going to end, not being able to click off when we get sick of it, that's really difficult.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's true. I think both online, but I think the estuaries and the other things that we want to try and build, I think they're important. Mm-hmm. But I also am a businessman. I also know churches, we will never scale fast enough to create enough of us to solve the problem that's out there. Mm-hmm. So what do you do as an individual? So Andrew, I would sit there and I'd talk to you, which is you're passionate, right? Mm-hmm. We need to find ways to interact with those people that are around us, that are dealing with the meaning crisis. And there is a cost. Like, at some point, first off, he has to be a great husband. Then he has to be a great dad. Then he needs to be a pastor. Then he needs to be a friend. Then he needs to be a son. There's have these things. You have these things but you also have other people that are there. And so like one of the things that I would say, and I've always kind of done this, but I don't know if you're going to a church or if you're part of other groups, climbing groups or whatever. We all have these places that we plug into and they're all good. But like even within your faith traditions, here's the things that's really cool. It's happened to me. I am actually been going to a church where I've met 4 young men that came from watching Peterson to Pajot into church. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
Meaning crisis people. But now I know this language or whatever, the point is like, and so let's just say you throw about the suicide or whatever in Christianity or whatever. I mean, if you run into people, you're going to be the embodiment of Christ for them. Who cares what a doctrine says? Or you're going to become the embodiment of love for that person who's struggling with suicide or whatever those things you do. Your love for them and you're walking with them and you're being with them, and like what Mo's trying to talk about with those, and he's a little different in a pastor and a counseling relationship, but you have the ability to speak true love, true truth, and it doesn't have any of the dogma or the doctrines around it. It really doesn't. Right? You just get to be love and honesty. And then the other thing is like, when you pick certain people, you need to understand that, okay, I'm going to go into the pit with them, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to take time, and it's going to be a emotional cost and all those other sorts of things. So we all have the capability to take these learnings and these things we have. And even if 100 estuary groups were launched next year, let's just say we get 100 estuary groups in 100 cities across the globe. It's not enough to meet the meaning crisis, right?
Mhm.
But we can meet the meaning crisis in our lives with the people that we come into connection with. And that's where it has to happen.
The thing is, I'm not actually certain about that, because maybe you guys can. Like, you guys sound like you've talked with people in recovery and dealing with the meaning crisis in their lives, but most people haven't. And we're gonna have to train people.
So this is good, Andrew. And you know what? That's a fair comment, because I am 53 and I've been through a lot of life and training and been a dad and have been through recovery groups and went to seminary. I've got all this training, and most of it's been life training, by the way, by my failures that have taught me how to come through it or how to do things better or whatever. So when you say that, what would you specifically like to see us do that you think would impact the people that you need to be equipped, or the people that you think you need to, that you're seeing here?
Let me give an example. On Discord, you can join any server, right? You can go to Discord Hub and then search up any server to go to and just join, right? They've got, free invite links. You just get on there. So there's these Discord servers where, they just label it venting, and then anyone can join. They go into some sort of channel and then they vent about whatever, and then they leave. And you go into the servers and you see, like, I've let my parents down again. I'm doing horrible on my schoolwork. I'm, eating into their financials, and they're worrying about me, and I don't think it's going to change. And the only agency I have left to break the cycle is suicide, right? And then you can't help them, right? It's because these channels, you can leave and join at any time. It's not participatory at all. But the people who stick around, those channels, they see that stuff like every day. There's a new person joining who's going to vent about how he's suicidal and depressed, and how's it new this time, right? They get desensitized to it. And some of the only way to become embodied in those channels is by talking about, like, a novel manifestation of your depression. So, like, you'll have some posts by longtime whatever members of those channels saying, like, today is attempt number 3, couldn't get over my fear of dying. I took a bunch of melatonin, but I knew that the sleeping pills wouldn't kill me. So instead, when I took them, I slept for like a day and a half. And when I woke up, I was still tired. And the complete lack of this little corner talking about those embodied moments, it's like you guys have the vocabulary to talk about it, but you guys aren't addressing it at all.
This little corner is definitely guilty of committing the sin of doing too much thinking, talky, and yeah.
And yeah, I see these interfaith fights, and the whole reason we've gone to these traditions that we've said are important are because they're addressing the meaning crisis. And when they're fighting, instead of doing the thing that, instead of addressing the meaning crisis, which is the whole thing that's supposed to be giving the revival, it's like you guys are abandoning your responsibility.
Well, I do think one aspect always to keep in mind is that some of these people
thank you
having
for
the
sharing that,
argument
Andrew.
are also going through those same things. Like the arguments for some people are part of their own. Some of these people probably are suicidal at certain points, and they're pretending they're not. And I mean, just to give an example, like growing up, for me, when my sister had her first kid, my sister's 12 years older than me, so I was an uncle at 11, and my niece was like, I was like her favorite uncle, Uncle Mo. And then, you know, my sister went through a divorce. It was really hard for her kids, and her kids started drifting and whatnot. And I had no idea, you know, I was only, you know, 22, still figuring out my life, you know, trying to be a musician. And, you know, in high school, my niece tried to kill herself multiple times. And what did Uncle Mo do about it? Nothing. And now, even as a almost 40-year-old man, I'm often terrified to talk to my niece because I wasn't there for her when to a certain degree I ought to have been, and I didn't know how to do it then, and I don't know how to do it now either. And it's one of those things. So I don't know what the hell I'm doing most of the time. And when I was young, man, you know, I was a good Christian boy in school. You know, I have a peaceful life and all that stuff. You know, an example. And there were so many people around me struggling, and I had no idea how to talk to any of them. And I've been through some of these chat rooms. I've tried to talk to people, and I failed a lot of times. It's the one thing that I've learned, and that's what, you know, there's over the past couple of weeks, there's been several people that have kind of passive aggressively shit on me for trying to put together this organization. But part of the reason that I'm okay with that is because I know some of these people, through hearing from other people, are really struggling with stuff. And I think that's one of the aspects of my faith is I've learned how to take it. And if me letting somebody else crap on me will help them, great. But the hardest part is that there's so many people that I have tried to help, that I am going to try to help, that won't take it or that it won't work with. And that hurts really badly. When you do give everything, when you do feel like you say all the right things that you learned from Peterson or whatever, and it doesn't help, and they still make the decisions, and they still go on that path, and sometimes, and they still feel unloved. Like I remember a young alcoholic woman that I was trying to help. I would bail her, show up at 3 a.m. at a bar sometimes to help her get home. And I remember one time she just looked at me in the face and said, "You think I'm a piece of shit?" And I was like, how could you say that I think that when I'm doing all this stuff for you? But that was still her perception. And so it's like, I to a certain degree, it seems to me, and I'm still relatively new in this little corner, or at least because I've always been on the outskirts, that even the people with these arguments that may seem like they got stuff together are just as broken as I am. And so part of the help, at least what I'm trying to do, is show people that, yeah, I'm also broken. And I haven't got it figured out yet. But what makes it okay to a certain degree is the relationships. What has always pulled me off the left when it comes to suicide is, who am I screwing over? And for a lot of these people, they don't feel like they're screwing anybody over. And so helping people understand that, no, if your death, your disappearing means something to somebody in the real world, in the embodied world. And so I think that's a good thing to think about. This little corner, what can we do to value or to display the value of people that join?
Yeah. No, Andrew, first off, I think you just embodied the realness. Like you were saying, people take their mask off in here, right? And quit just thinky talky things. But you shared something that's passionately from your heart. That's real. I personally love to see that you care about this issue and those sorts of people so deeply. One of the things I guess I would share, I think there could be a place with, I would say, trained and good people. Could there be a server that could be a place where people who had that, where they went and it wasn't just an event, where people really tried to connect with them and get them into a place, like, because that's my stepdaughter is she got a psychology type degree, probably might go get a PhD, but right now, the past year, she's been working for the suicide prevention hotline. So that's what she does. She's been trained for that or whatever. But what I can tell you, dealing with suicidal people in my life, my best friend when I was 13 shot himself. I remember just the horror of what that was. I've lost a lot of people. I deal in recovery circles, so I've dealt with this. Real life, I've dealt with this in my home. Not my job to say, to disclose someone else's issues publicly, right? But I've dealt with this. It's a really hard thing, though, because people in those places, I could just say it would deal with an addict, but there are certain places is like, there's a lot going on there. And to some extent, you have to be willing to accept, well, it's not even a willingness. Like you've got to be in a place where you can actually accept the help. And I don't know what that, here's the thing. It's a mystery. Like, I don't know why some people sometimes get to a position where they're willing to go get the help that they need and then the steps that they need to take. And some of it might be being honest with your parents, right? Some of it kind of the courage to be honest with a family member. It might be the courage to go tell a counselor on campus or something and start working your way into getting the help. Some of that might be inpatient stay. I mean, if you're really on that brink, there's crisis, there's moments where you need to be there. I've been a guy who's been in a treatment center, right? So I think all you can do in those instances, this is a very hard place for this to do this, but I think all you can do in those instances is try to be that person and to try to lead them to the places of real help. We're not equipped, Andrew. I'm just going to say this here. We are not equipped. We can share our stories and we can point those situations, man, they need professionals. Real, like in those crisis moments, like when you're getting there, like when you're to that point where you're attempting and you're doing those things, there's like real help that is needed. And then part of that is the meaning crisis stuff to put kind of the pieces around that. So it's a really complex, it's complex, but I'm not discounting what you're saying, right? And I think what I hear, so here, this sounds like you want to say something.
I'll say that the difference between like this little corner and those venting channels is that we're all aware of the impact of the meaning crisis and the need to be open in addressing that. Um, those venting channels are aware of that too, because they're profoundly embodied. You have, when people talk about trying to kill themselves in those channels, they know it better than we do. And the difference is that they don't have the toolbox to deal with it. And maybe we have some of that propositionally.
Oh, you're talking.
But-
So you're talking about like the professionals.
No, I'm talking about venting channels on Discord. They have embodied knowledge of the meaning crisis, right? When people talk about suicide attempts or whatever, they know what it's like, but they don't know how to deal with it at all. I like to think here on this little corner that we have good propositional knowledge on dealing with the meaning crisis. But if we don't understand the embodiment of the meaning crisis, when we say you should go see a counselor or whatever, people in the meaning crisis will know that you have no idea where they're at, right? If lots of people with depression know that when they talk about it with other people have no idea what they're talking about. They'll have no idea about their perspective. And so when those people say, oh, you should see a counselor, they know that advice is coming from someone who just doesn't know what they're talking about.
Well, see, here's what I'd say, Andrew. I've thought about committing suicide. I was on the brink of suicide. I've had plans in place. Okay. The other thing about addiction people, I will tell you, here's the hard fact. And see, the thing is, like, we do learn this when we're dealing with this recovery. I'm not equipped. Like, there's certain things that I'm not equipped. But you know what the answer was? And I just need to say, I'll embody this. You know what the answer for me was? Going to a treatment center and getting the help that I needed and changing my life.
Yeah. I'm not saying that we should be counselors or whatever.
But I'm just saying, so the point is like embodied people. So here's the thing, and like my wife has volunteered with the suicide prevention, like the what's they call that walk every year. So we've done that a few years. And she's, publicly talked about that because that's been a part of her story, right? And so she's really, you're talking about something that's in my family, right? Like really in my family. My grandma committed suicide, died by suicide, and an aunt who died by suicide. So this is real to me, okay? And I think what you're talking about is there's that moment to where we need to be real, embody it, and connect with that person. Right? We need to start to make that connection in that moment, right? And then we need to try and take that person and get them onto a path where they can get out of the pit that they're in, the meaning crisis pit that they're in this hole, right? And I do think that takes, I would just say for me, and have I seen for others or whatever, that does take the right kind of professional help. And like, I think we can provide places and spaces to where we can spot things, to try and get people into the right hands with the people that really can. Because, so for example, when you go, if you need to go to a mental health ward because you're going to harm yourself or whatever, really what that is like, that's the emergency room, right? Because someone tells you, I'm going to harm myself. And when they tell you that, when they say, literally, I have an active plan in place. I'm beyond just thinking about killing myself. I've got a plan in place. You need to go take them to a place so they can't execute that plan. Okay. That's it's like an emergency room. It's just a place to kind of stabilize, get into a safe space so they can maybe get their legs under them. So then you can go to the next place, which still might be inpatient or something else. Like, this is a real thing. And for us, I'm just going to, having dealt with this live and in person, they need more help in that immediacy than what we can do. But I think what we can do is like, so what can we do if someone's in there? Hopefully we can try and connect at a heart level with that person and communicate into them and say, I hear you, I see you. Like, I mean, I validate like where you're at. Right. And some of it, if it's like clinical stuff that some people are dealing with, and it's not meaning crisis, that's like, it's a whole different other thing. But I think it's heartfelt love that hopefully you can be a voice that they can hear, that will penetrate something. And then you can get them to the place where they can stabilize. And then, and then what do we do around that? Which is like, I think we play a role on the path of recovery. Like we could play a role in helping to help people deal with those things. But, trying to deal with people in those moments is it's so complex.
Yeah. I'll say that because community has broken down so much and people are only getting community online where they can jump in and out as they please, the only way to help those people who can come and go at the drop of a hat is to be ready at a drop of a hat, to actually understand the embodied nature of the meaning crisis.
So I hear what you're saying. So this is something which I like this, which is so they can jump out. And again, this has got to be some people that really know it and are in it and can embody it. So like if there was a place to where hopefully you can, this is hard, but hopefully you can do your best to connect with that person right there in that moment so they don't run away. And then try and get them to, someplace. And
I think proximity also, Matt, I mean, proximity and embodiment, because, we've talked about the breakdowns of communities, and that's a real thing, right? I mean, our society, everybody commutes to everything. Over the past 10 years or so, I've been trying to do something in my neighborhood, and I bought a bunch of homes, renovated them, sold them, trying to sell them to people that I know. I have family members that live around the corner from me. That's been really hard. But it's something that I've been really trying to do. And it's funny because I've mentioned it in my Bridges of Meaning group. I've mentioned in one of my seminary classes, and everybody's like, that's a really cool idea. I would love something like that. And I'll tell them something like, well, I have a house down the street. Why don't you come? There's another apartment across the street from me that's available for rent. Come here. Let's build community together. There's a lot of people that know that community is a good thing. There's not a lot of people that are willing to do it. And that's tricky. I mean, I'm still working at that, because I'm kind of committed to that in a very real way. So anybody that's watching wants to be my neighbor and be in real community, I'll find a place for you over here. I have a church around the corner. But yeah, I mean, I think that's worth brainstorming, is how do we bring communities back? How do we build up? I mean, Peterson has been really helpful for me in that regard. I was always trying to change the world. It's like, okay, well, how do I help my neighbor right next door? Okay, I didn't know my neighbor's name at the time. And then if I have a good relationship there, well, how about the next neighbor? And then try to focus there a bit.
Yeah, one of the things I've been thinking about, and I think Max of Meaning kind of had talked about something that he wanted to do, but this was something that I had an idea about, which is what we really need to try and do is connect with these people. Like if they're there, Andrew, if they're in that dark place, the one thing we need to try and do is connect them. Yeah. And sometimes family, people don't think that family's not the right spot, but they just don't realize they actually would be the right people. And sometimes it isn't. So to get them connected live in their real life into some help, but what could we do online? One of the things I thought about is it's very hard to have someone commit 24 hours, 7 days a week into a channel to always be there the second someone needs something. Let's just say recovery issue, right? But one of the things we could do is have a place where we could point people Like if you're dealing with this or whatever. So let's just say someone's dealing with addiction issues and doesn't know what to do. Well, maybe on Wednesdays and, Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays, Chad and Lance will be someplace, with other people. And then those people can come in and they'll really deal with that, that people need to deal with that. Or like, so for example, in that sort of scenario would be, what could this little corner do? I guarantee we have people with the real world experience, i.e. they've been there, they've dealt with that, they know it, and they've come out the other side. Or we have some folks to where, if you meet someone, you could say, hey, there are these people that get together on Mondays and Wednesday nights at whatever, and they're going to talk about this stuff. Would you like to at least, so we can at least be the start of getting them into that, a sort of community that's going to hear them, that they, they're going to feel heard. So for example, so I'll tell you, Andrew, which is I used to always feel when people were doing suicide attempts that I always felt that was selfish. I've only changed my mind on that in the past 3 years. And I realized it's not, that they're not being selfish. I see the impacts. Like I just had this opinion and I would say things about it. And I've come back the other side to just realize I need to give the person the freedom to say that they're not being selfish in that moment. And that's been a huge transformation for me in terms of how I've seen that. But I think we could probably, we have enough talent and people and experience and wisdom and real life stuff and talents and everything else that we could find some times and some spaces to where we could point some people who could then connect with them here the only way we can online, but hopefully then convince them to get connected where they are so they can actually get the help they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I think nowadays you have like online drifters, they don't have any community in person, so they go around online and get whatever community they can get here. And that takes the form of those venting Discord servers, and takes the form of whatever anonymous social media and whatnot, this whole avatar culture and whatnot. And when they come into those communities, they're already embodied in their meaning crisis. It's not, although we're meeting these people for the first time, their meaning crisis is completely, it's gone on for them. It's lived in. And the only way to get someone to stick around, to value this online community more than any other online community that they can pop in and join, is a real understanding of that lived in experience of the meaning crisis. That's the reason why people tend to stay in those venting servers, because they know that everyone on there is embodying the meaning crisis. They know that when they talk about eating a ton of sleeping pills, there's going to be people who have done that before. And if we don't understand that, we're not going to help these people.
And one of the things I would say with that, Andrew, which is, again, and I think you're putting a call out there, if there are people in our communities that have that experience, because there are, I know, I've talked to them, that have the time and that wanted to be that place. One of the things, like, I use my real name, and that sort of a space, if you turned your cameras on and you got your avatars off and the people that were there for them were real live people, and they could be behind their avatar if they wanted, but you're modeling that coming out. I do think that that's something that we could potentially do. And part of what I hear you talking about, Andrew, which is, I think what Paul would hope to see to come up around this, is you see people with passions and something deeply, and you have a passion for this, which is a beautiful. And so maybe you're going to be the catalyst that people will come around you to say, okay, here's this particular thing in the meaning crisis I see that is real crisis, right? How can we provide something that embodies the best of what this is, that could speak into a person in that moment, into these people to the best we can, and with the understanding, knowing that, you know, we can't control anything, and all we can do is carry the message and do the best we can do, but, you know, people are going to do what they're going to do. But I think you, I don't know. I think you might have maybe just started a catalyst for some sort of a new sort of a channel or a space or a place for folks that want to come around you and be a part of that, what you have a passion for.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think modeling the realness. You know, I was a part of it. I worked at a Catholic school for a little bit, and they have these retreats that they do. They're real special retreats. I had never been to one before, but I was just like a chaperone. And they had a part where one of the people read a letter. They read letters to some of the students. And one of the letters was from one of the students' dad. And this is a student who was a huge a-hole, you know, jock, tougher than everybody. And, you know, his dad was like, you know, maybe I don't say it enough, but I love you. You're my son. I'm proud of you. And he broke down crying, as they often did. But later on, he said, I don't remember my dad ever telling me that he loved me. Until they read that letter to me, I didn't know. And I think, but it was a beautiful moment because he felt so disconnected from his family and all these things that he never showed off to anybody. But just receiving that letter from his dad saying, hey, I know I don't say it. It's uncomfortable for me for reasons that go back generations from my childhood. But you are my son and I love you and I'm proud of you. And the huge impact that had. And I was like, man, how do I, in my ministry, how do I recreate that? How do I do something similar to connect people back to their families? Because, you know, there's a lot of dysfunction in my family. But at the end of the day, there really is a desire for good if we can tap into it. And I'm just as uncomfortable as they are with telling them that I love them and all that stuff. It's like, how can we make that more comfortable again? And how can we model that?
Yeah, I think part of it is, like in that story, that letter provided a level of anonymity. Right, the father didn't have to tell the son straight to his face. And that's the same mechanism that these depressed people with no community use online. And that's part of why I'm talking about. That's part of why I'm able to talk about this with you guys. I know that if you guys don't respond well or whatever, I can just, you know, head out. I'll never see you guys again. You guys will never see me again. And this whole attempt at dealing with the meaning crisis will just be like, you know, dust in the wind. And I mean, that's a contributor to the meaning crisis, you know?
Yeah, it's available. I mean, anybody could take that path.
Well, I'm proud of you, Andrew, for sharing that.
Thanks. Yeah. I just hope people address it.
All right, guys. Well, I'm so happy I got to talk with you. Your conversation was super interesting, but I got to go take care of my kids. Hopefully they're still doing okay.
Have a good one.
So I've got to get going here pretty too, Andrew, but I don't know, your share was really powerful. I respected that. I think when you talk about embodying and modeling what you wanted to see, or what you something you see and something you're called to. I mean, you just did it.
Thanks.
Yeah. What I think would be there is like, and if you, I know there are going to be some people around here that I think would get behind trying to figure out what we can do, because we're limited. We are limited online, but like you say, people seeing real stuff like that becomes powerful. Like it's not, even if you help one person, that's valuable, right?
Mhm.
Like literally, if you saved one life, then it matters, So I think you might be surprised. There might well, I'll call out for you. I'd be willing to be a part of a real space around here, where people take off masks and talk about real things, and and the other thing is one thing I just share as a wisdom step is we can only carry the message. We can only try to help, and do the best we can.
Mhm.
But people are going to live their lives and either accept or not accept and do what they want to do. And when you put your nose in those arenas, you just have to be willing to, it's very hard. It is really hard, but you just have to have a humility also you don't take on all that onto yourself, that if things don't go your way or someone does the unthinkable, and it's a tough place to be in. All
I
right.
mean, yeah. I do think that this little corner has taken on the mantle of dealing with the meaning crisis, and that if we're going to keep that mantle, we're going to have to do that sort of stuff.
All right.
All right. Thanks
Well,
for
hey,
talking. Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah. Have a good one.
God bless you, Andrew.
Thanks. You as well. Let me look at some of these comments because I know chat's probably popping off. Whoa, there's a lot of comments. Ethan, I think you're right in saying that you're not going to embody a tradition via the internet. You have to go to a physical church. That's a great proposition. Who gives a shit about propositions, though? You're sitting here criticizing propositions of the church while being outside the church. I assure you, Ethan, I am not outside a church. Okay, go to church, you need communion, da-da-da-da-da. Ethan, you're killing me. All right. I'm not too sure that people get what I'm talking about, so let me give you an example. An embodied thought that depressed people tend to have is that it'd be better off if I was dead. It'd be better off for everyone. I am dragging everyone down. I'm a financial burden. I'm an emotional burden. I'm just an attention drag on everyone. And I know I can't change. And the only way to break out of this cycle is if I were to kill myself. The fact that we have absolutely no videos and no response to any sort of the embodied nature of meaning crises. It's a stain on us, and I think it's a testimony against us when we say we're addressing the meaning crisis. Because if we're not dealing with the meaning crisis in any sort of serious manner, I think we have way too many videos on like dead traditions such as, I don't know, Stoicism and Neoplatonism and whatnot, and not enough on how the meaning crisis itself is embodied. If we need to check the map to the territory, we need to be checking these traditions to how they're addressing the meaning crisis. And if we don't understand the meaning crisis, what are we doing checking out all these traditions? People have talked about anonymity and how some of these conversations should happen behind closed doors. I think there's benefits towards it happening behind closed doors, right? Like, I can't. Nobody, if it were to happen behind closed doors, nobody can, harass me or get in contact with me, or try. Employers can't, choose not to hire me or whatever. But the meaning crisis isn't happening behind closed doors. I just think that people in this corner are not taking the meaning crisis seriously enough. I know it's strange having this conversation on like a one-off, whatever, live video on this spat between Jacob and Nate. But this is the breaking down of community. This is the result of a meaning crisis, that I have to have this conversation online, on the internet, on a video that's completely irrelevant to the topic. I think part of why this little corner has taken off so much is because it's given a vocabulary for people, let's say, within these traditions to explicate how it solves the meaning crisis. But this little corner has not addressed the meaning crisis itself. And I'm going to be frank, it might be the young people who are dealing with the meaning crisis themselves who need to answer this. And I know that's going to cause problems for anonymity. I just... For example, this little corner was only effective in drawing me out of my personal meaning crisis because I had personal experiences with because when I watched hour-long lectures of Dr. Vervaeke explaining how the meaning crisis worked and feeling how it explicated my thoughts, I could understand. And when Dr. Vervaeke pointed me towards getting into a tradition, I knew he had an embodied relationship with this stuff. But for the rovers out there who are part of any online community, or for the people who don't want to watch whatever 56 lecture series, each an hour long, you're not helping them. And we need to go out and address the meaning crisis on its own terms. We can't be an in-group. Now that we're on the topic of suicidality, I think that suicidality and depression is understanding that requires a very prescient change in your thinking. For instance, Gore gives you a perspectival knowledge on what suicide would be like. Should we take down Gore? Should Gore not be allowed on the internet? I'm not sure whether perspectival knowledge of suicide is a bad thing. Like, people might struggle with that idea, but I'm going to say beforehand, if you're depressed or whatever, and this conversation is bringing up things, you might want to turn off. Because depression does suck you in. It does change your thinking and, I don't know, make it seem better than you're thinking outside of depression. With that said, self-harm, a participatory knowledge of suicide, can act as that knife's edge against suicide. So Gore, that perspectival knowledge of suicide, can act as that knife's edge against suicide. I see this little corner's complete failure to grapple with any of this stuff as just a blot against its record. I think it's just, so far, it's a lot of the recent stuff is just a bunch of religious people's pride in saying that, hey, we weren't wrong after all. I honestly think I'm way too mild-mannered about this stuff. The fact that the only way I can talk about this, the only way I can, whatever, bring the alarm bell against for the community is by doing it online with lots of people who I'm meeting with for the first time. Is when I have, and I know many other people have been struggling with this for years or decades now. I give this little corner a bit of a break for that because it's only existed for a year or so now. I give our culture much less of a break because it's been around all this time. Yes, sure, if you like. No worries. I'm not the host of this or anything. You might be waiting backstage. If so, I can't see you. Hello.
Hey,
How's it
Andrew.
going, Jason?
Good. How you doing? Pretty heavy topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to hop on here. I don't know. I don't know that I have much to say. It's I feel like it's a topic that's hard for me to talk about, but I don't know. I wanted to at least hop on here so you weren't by yourself.
Thank you.
I mean, I really appreciate you bringing all this up and talking about all this and talking about it publicly, because it's, I don't know. I think there's some certain topics that I think are just very sensitive and involve so much hurt that people are scared they'll say the wrong thing. And like you said, even talking about it might stir up certain things for some people, and they might find themselves tuning out. But we don't want that. But I don't know. Oh, Chad, you can join too, man. I can let you in if you're okay with that, Andrew.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, you said something interesting that I hadn't heard before. Sorry.
Go for it.
Oh, well, you said something. It sounded like you said some people engage in self-harm as an act to counter suicide or suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't really thought about that much anymore, but I can just, maybe this will open up a door to talk about it more. I don't mind being real here. I used to cut myself. I'm not above doing it. Like now I've been in, even last year, I didn't do it for years and years. And then last year I just, so I don't even know if it was depressed, because you just hit this level of apathy where you just don't really, there's nothing there.
Mm.
And, so I mean, I ended up doing it again. And it was pretty freaking obvious. People would be like, how'd you get that gash on your arm? And I'm like, yeah, a knife. Like, I don't know. I didn't have words to say, but it was this weird thing where, it felt like satisfying a demon or something like that. I don't really know. As weird as that sounds. But I haven't thought about it before, so I didn't know if you actually had any advice into that or had any thoughts on it, on what that is, that desire to self-harm, to almost put the beast at bay or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like you're paying for being such a sack of shit. You know.
Yeah,
And
is that
then
why people do that, you think?
yeah, and then that's not helping anything. So it's you just keep doing it. But that sensation of pain is like really real, like
Yeah.
that's the argument against it's not doing anything, that the pain is real.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in there's this movie Annihilation. Have you seen that?
A bit, not too much.
There's a line in there. It was something similar to that, where there was a girl in that they said like she cuts herself, and that was the reason, just because it was, I think, because it was something like that, because it was, you wanted to feel something real, something like that. So Chad, it shouldn't be ended. Let me post the thing again. It shouldn't be ended. It's try that one maybe. Yeah, I mean, you can say more about it if you want. I'm basically trying to just come in to listen and ask questions, because I don't know that I have much to say. I mean, there's Chad. I've definitely thought about suicide a lot. I always thought it was absurd when people didn't think about suicide. It's just like, I thought it was just something people did.
Yeah.
But hey, Chad.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
It's going.
It's tough, man. Tough topic. I've only caught like near the last maybe 15 minutes or so. And it's a tough one. I mean, it's a tough one that it's kind of seems like maybe a taboo like topic, but it's interesting because I think there are more people deal with it and are willing to admit it. Yeah. Is this something you've had to deal with you've dealt with for your whole life, or?
Since 8th grade, so
Yeah. Do you have any idea where it might have came from?
I mean, it's not just like one thing. I know some people have like traumatic experiences, and then that just spirals them. It started in 8th grade because like I changed schools and I didn't know anyone, and like my parents weren't ready for like the whole moving thing, so I'd go to a school where like I knew nobody and nobody knew me, and then like all the kids would go home, and then I'd be stuck there for like 6 hours just waiting for my parents to arrive. I don't know. I haven't really fit in since then. I mean, I do have some friends. It's not all bad. But yeah, nobody thinks like this. Like, or at least nobody that I've talked to who I actually have like a relationship, in-person relationship with. Like, nobody thinks like this.
Yeah. It's yeah. It's like I said, it's strange that it's not like, I don't know. It's just not a common topic that people will talk about, but I think more people deal with it than than are clearly willing to admit. Yeah, I don't know. For me, like I remember being, you know, who knows, maybe 9-10 years old, and I don't know if there's anything I can blame, but somewhere the idea entered my mind that, well, for me, I didn't want to end life necessarily. I think that's what I was thinking about. But I think it like when I look more at it today, because I'm so acquainted with it, that it'll show up. It could just show up. I could wake up in the morning and life could be going great, and the first thing that crossed my mind is we should get out of here. You know, we should, you know, and it's like, where did that come from? And when just somewhere, I think it's not. I don't. When I look at it today, I don't want to exit life entirely, because there is something about life that is exciting, and even in the chaos, like I think for me, when I look at it, it's like, though, there's like early on, it was I didn't want to kill myself because I would miss the next Metallica record. I know that doesn't sound like a very important thing to stick around for, but it was for me. And today I think of what I really desire, and I think that's why I was so susceptible to the power of chemicals. Was the desire was to push pause on everything completely. I just wanted to go black, but I don't want to go. I want to be able to come back and play the game. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a problem when like you sleep and then you wake up and you just want to go back, like sleep again. Yeah, like you don't even dream. You just.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think that's what I meant when I was saying, when I referenced apathy, because, and maybe that's not the right word for it, because I don't know that there is a word to get at it. It's almost like how there's not a word to get at God. It's like whatever that feeling is, it's like this. It's hard to pinpoint, because I remember I wanted to kill myself. I mean, I thought of killing myself my whole life, but I used to want to kill myself because of, like, I don't know, you feel sad or something, or then and then I had pain, like this excruciating pain I dealt with for a while. So it was almost like I wanted to kill myself, get rid of that, get out of this torture. And it's like those are almost like wanting to kill myself because of passion or something, because it's, you know, there's like a reason or something. But then I've dealt with, and this was recently, with the feeling you're talking about, where it's just like there's you wake up and you really even want to wake up. You're just like, and you don't dream. You don't really even want to dream, and it's just it is meaninglessness, and it's like, and that I think to me is a lot scarier, and I don't really even know how to deal with that, because there's just like no love. There's no desire, no love. There's nothing there anymore, and it's just that. That's why I can't even describe it really, because it's just, yeah, it's an awful state to be in. And I don't know what helps. Maybe I would think probably community is one of the best things, but when you're in that state, you don't really even want community. You don't care. Yeah. Like, you don't like going to sell like a help program or something. Like, I would have been the last thing I would have done. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not gonna walk you anywhere. Yeah. Like, I don't care. I don't like, yeah, it's, yeah. I don't know. It's more shocking that I didn't kill myself and people don't kill themselves, to me, because when you're in that state, it's just it's surprising people come out of it. It's absolutely a miracle that people ever do. Yeah. To me, but
yeah.
I think for me, I made peace so long ago that the stuff that was going on in my mind these kind of elusive, maybe they are spirit, who the fuck knows, but whatever it is, it's a lie. I know that it's a lie because I really love life. I'm susceptible to emotions, so I'm a weirdo, right? So I used to go on YouTube. I don't do this much anymore, but I used to go on YouTube and like look up like random acts of kindness and just like cry. I'd find things that would help emote and affect me because I like the feeling of feeling good. The problem is I also have the feeling of I also feel things pretty hard the other way. So what I know about me is like when I just have these kind of elusive thoughts that run through my head, I just know that they're a lie. And I've had to kind of, for me, I've kind of I personified them. There's like this, for me, do whatever you want, but this is what I've done. Probably really corny. I don't give a shit. This has helped me. I've realized one day that I felt like that there was this spirit inside of me, and I visualized this. There was like this shadow. It was just a shadow sitting in an empty room on a bed that has no bedding. It's just a bed on a frame in an empty room. Nothing is on the walls. And this shadowy figure, I couldn't see any features, but I could tell that it was just resentful and painful and in pain for some reason. And it's looking outside, and everything is going on outside the room. Like it's looking out the window. Everything that's going on out there is just making him even more in more pain. And he's feeling this seething resentment, but it's not like anger at anybody. It's just like this eternal missing out on something. And I realized, because I would get really resentful with this feeling that I had, and so what I decided to do was jump into my imaginal frame and realize that whatever this thing was, the one thing it is missing is love. And so I decided to confront it and try to give it love. And I know that sounds so fucking corny, and just saying it out loud is really corny, but it's helped me because I know that this is just a part of who I am. There's a piece inside of me that is dark, and it's a fact, and it's okay. It's just a part of who I am, and it has its utility. And so once I started making peace with it, for me, when it does show up and I'm able to recognize that it's trying to be heard, I'll say, okay, you heard? Go sit the fuck down. We got better shit to do. That doesn't make the feeling go away, but what it does is remind me that I have to get into action somewhere else and try to be useful somewhere. Because like it kind of, once you get the ball rolling a little bit in the right direction, it helps. But the second I stop, it just goes black. So I have to constantly kind of be stretching myself and doing weird shit, like maybe picking up a piece of garbage on the fucking ground. I don't know. I don't care about the environment. I'm doing that because I need to do something so that I know I'm being useful.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always, it's not a fix all or anything like that, but I've just found that I really have to stretch myself, and that I've really been built to kind of go through this. My whole life I've gone through it. Like I said, I'm like 8-9 years old thinking about this stuff in bed, like trying to hold my breath with a pillow over my face, toying with this idea. And at 12 years old, I'm in the basement while I'm hanging from a rope in the basement by a rafter while my cousin's laughing at me. So like I'm very acquainted with this shit my whole life. And it breaks my heart when I meet people and they do this or I read about it. And I'm almost kind of jealous of them, I think. But that's that thing inside me. It's like, I don't know. I want to encourage anybody or you or whomever. First of all, if you have to get some sort of help, do it. Like if you have to fucking explore medicine, do it. I just watched something the other day that broke my heart, and then these people who are very religious, they have family member who killed themselves, and they said that they weren't mentally ill or anything. It's like, so we have to be willing to kind of step out into the unknown in some other places. Sometimes that means medical help. Sometimes it means setting aside our pride and maybe go sitting for a week at a place. Maybe it means medication. Maybe it means really stretching ourselves, regardless of what I think or feel about my situation, and really putting myself out into places where I can actually have on the ground usefulness. Maybe it means like what you're doing now. You're reaching out, you're talking about it. But yeah,
That's
Like-
really good, Chad.
Mhm.
I feel this fucking sucks, dude.
Yeah, like personally, like people talk about things they do before they die or whatever. I don't know. Or like say, like you're talking about doing whatever to cope with this. Like one thing people do to cope is like they just start like spending money, just like screw the future. Like, and when you do that, it's not like I'm gonna do this or else I'm gonna kill myself. It's like I'm gonna be dead in a month, and what are these numbers in my bank account doing? Like might as well experience all I can while I've still got this month.
Yeah. Well, there's not a lot of rationality around this. And sometimes you hear about people just going business as usual. Wake up in the morning, fucking go to work, come home, and nothing's changing. So, like, again, for me, I had to make peace with the fact that this is a piece of what my mind has. This is a part of who I am. And I have to make peace with the fact that it's a liar. That doesn't mean I have to listen to it. Like our people I've talked with, and they say, Chad, you're not your thoughts. It's just a part of who you are. And sometimes, again, you just got to really stretch to do something different. And just can't.
Yeah, that voice is part of how I can have this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think now that you brought that, I don't think that's corny or cheesy or whatever at all, Chad. I think I've basically done the same things for a long time, and and if I don't personify this aspect, I'll oftentimes just almost weirdly kind of step outside of myself and give myself a lecture or something, or I'll just be like David in the Psalms or something, where he talked to his own soul. He'd just be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you cast down? So I'd actually tell whatever part of me that is sad or whatever, outside thoughts are coming, that, actually talk to them. And some of them feel internal, like you're talking about, and then other ones feel external, like the one I mentioned about like cutting myself. That always seems external for some reason. That feels like that thought comes from out here, and it'll just like enter, and I'm like, oh, that was like weird. Like when it first came back, I hadn't even had a thought in like 10 years. Then all of a sudden it was there, and I was like, well, that's weird. What the heck is that doing there? And so that I could personify for sure a lot easy, like definitely a lot easier, I think. And kind of have in a way. I haven't really got an image for it, but I've kind of named it. And so when it comes, I can name it. And like you said, I don't know, talk to it and tell it to go or whatever. But yeah, I think that's to me, I think that seems helpful. I don't know.
Yeah, coming out of depression, those internal thoughts became external thoughts. which I'm very grateful for.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Although, for a strange reason, like, sometimes I miss depression, and those are internal thoughts. Those aren't external.
That's relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't know why. When the
This-
depression goes, I'm like, why am I happy now? I kind of miss it.
Yeah. Just know, like, stick around 5 minutes.
Let's
Like
have a
that-
beer and catch up.
Don't be too attached to, because I don't want to sound like I can just tell myself, oh, just change my mind. It's not that. It's recognize what is with me, and I'm like, it is what it is. It's with me. I'm not going to change how I feel right now. I'm not going to be able to change like my emotions or my phenomenological experience of what's happening right now. I just need to know it's with me. We got shit to do otherwise. Yes, it's with me, but it can't stop me from taking other actions that I can take. That's the thing. Like, just, it's so, yeah, because I've never been able to just change my mind and just be happy. That's just not ever existed for me. But that's why, for me, action and embodiment, like you said earlier in the stream, you said people come into this space embodying a meaning crisis, right? Yeah, I'm very disciplined in my spiritual malady. I'm very disciplined in it. I've spent a lifetime growing into that. And so, like, that tells me, well, there are things maybe I could do that I have to grow out of. It takes a lot, though. Like, it takes a lot. And part of it is just knowing that whatever that is going on there, it's bullshit. It's not the truth. I know what the truth is, and I try to follow that. Again, it doesn't change how I feel. It doesn't change any of that. It's just I lean into the action, not how I feel. And also, I mean, when I'm really immersed in service to others, there was a lot of work that I had to do, and this voice we're talking about has left for the most part. It does still show up from time to time, but I also can kind of equate that with some of the being asleep at the wheel. And the problem with being asleep at the wheel is you don't really know it until you're waking up, and that's not fun all the time. So that's why I think action-oriented living towards because the way I understand spirituality, you can take it however you like, but spirituality isn't something I do in a vacuum. This is not just for me. This is all prayers, all spiritual action is others oriented, and seeking a higher power, seeking God, or whatever that is. So it's not about me. This is about, because that's really the sickness inside of me. It's me on me. It's me on me. So much of me on me that I can't see you.
Yeah.
So I have to just get back into moving towards others, moving towards God. All that's kind of in the same stew, I guess.
Yeah, if the saints are real, all this prayer shit is bullshit. You know.
Well, have you experienced miracles?
I think the closest thing I have to that sort of stuff is reading Crime and Punishment and I don't know, just being one with Raskolnikov, you know, as he's walking around the streets in a daze, not having eaten in like a week, and just giving out money, the last of his possessions, to people on the street, you know, thinking that it'd be better if he were to jump off into the river, and might as well give off these, you know, the few cents he has in his pocket.
That's the miracle you've experienced while reading.
Yeah, like it was like I wasn't reading. It was like I was watching myself.
That's nice. I kind of had a similar experience when I read Fantasties. I think it just like, yeah, it's a good book to get into as well. But what did you mean? Did you mean something more specific when you asked that question, Chad, about miracles?
Well, I just think for me, I try to turn my sight and my mind's eye, my seeking towards the most sometimes the most trivial shit, the most basic things, and I'm always looking for sometimes they're coincidences. I don't give a fuck. I'll take them. You know what I'm saying? So for me, sometimes those are miracles, because I don't have to. What I've learned is that I don't have to base any measurement of what I experience as a miracle or even the presence of God by what anybody else says.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I have to rely on your version of that, I'm fucked.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm able to open this up in a way where I get to lean into the solipsistic, I get to lean into the personal, and I can say whatever, man. It might be a song coming on at the right time. I don't know, dude. I've had that. I've had countless little experiences, and for me, I try to integrate those simple things into nice little breadcrumbs. Just I'm on the right path. Something is good. Clearly, there's a bunch of bullshit going on. There's no stopping that. So, like, I have to, whatever I turn my sight to and I'm really looking for, I believe I see it. It doesn't have to be white light experience. But what does happen is when I look at my past and I start to look at all the little things, those do accumulate into kind of like a bigger ball of light.
Yeah. It's a really good point. I was talking to my friend Cal. Well, you probably know Cal as well. I was talking to him. It was either the last night or the night before about that as well, and saying how God. We have all these pictures of God, I guess, moving in these. When we talk of miracles, we think this massive thing, or like the splitting of the Red Sea, or something like that. But then, when you look at in hindsight, you could just have, I don't know, you're walking and you find a rock or something that's special to you, and it's like that's the smallest thing. But then in hindsight, as you've looked back on your life, you realize that one little thing is greater than like the way it's affected your life is like, and affected the people around you, and everything through that is almost greater than splitting of the Red Sea or something like that. Or even talking about this depression, people, when they actually come out of it, this dark space where they don't even want to dream anymore. It's like the fact that people do come out of that is so much more more of a miracle to me than Jonah getting like puked back up by the whale, because it's like they're down there, you know, they're in the belly of hell, and it's like they actually come back out, and it's like, yeah, and it could just be the smallest thing that brings them out, and you don't think it's a miracle, and then you look back, 5 months later, 10 years later, and you're just like, wow, that one little thing just changed everything. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you can get to my age and just stop dreaming altogether. It's weird.
But you have dreams. You have dreams and goals, just not at night. You mean, right?
Dreams and goals. Yeah. I'm pretty. As far as dreams and goals go, it's weird because I used to be obsessed with being a musician, and my whole life was about trying to be this rock star, and like I really wanted to do that. I was very single-minded about that. And then when I burned my life to the ground and I had to start anew and I had no other choice, it was sink or swim. So I did what they suggested. I sought God to the best of my ability, right? And that started to grow and grow a little more. And then what eventually happened was I really started to settle into a couple basic things. One is seek God, and the other is serve others. Both of those things. And I knew I was going to do them both poorly. So, but when I really started to settle into that, eventually the dreams I had became irrelevant. And what I found was, for me anyways, being like a musician or something like that, or writing music, was very much attached to a desire to have questions answered. And a lot of those answers kind of went away. And so I leaned more into new set of dreams, which is, where can I be useful? Where can I try to serve? And I'm not saying it, I'm not a virtuous person. I'm a fucking asshole. I have a lot of my own problems. So I'm not saying, like, I'm not putting myself on any pedestal saying, oh, I'm a great guy to go out and help people. No, that ain't it, dude. But it is a goal and it is an aim. And so those are answering some questions that, in the same way that I used to have a desire for these other dreams and goals. So whatever you can find to do that. I know that not everybody's going to want to be geared towards love and service. It's a pain in the ass, but it sure as hell beats the shit out of waking up every day. And I dealt with suicidal ideation every day for many years. And sometimes it was also, sometimes some of that suicidal ideation and stuff, it was really attached to some dishonesty going on in my life. If I'm going to be real honest, it wasn't just an inflicted thing that came out of nowhere all the time. Sometimes there was stuff going on with me that I was just not being honest about. And I was afraid to talk about those things. And they were weighing upon me, like you're talking about Raskolnikov. This is what he's dealing with. Like, he's trying to hide from himself, but you can't.
Mm-hmm. And
what you get to realize is you don't have to. Like, you don't have to hide from yourself. And the thing is, it's impossible to do. That is a spiritual sickness. It's cold out here, boys.
Yeah, it's winter still.
Yeah, it's like
It's not.
25 out here right now.
Where are you at?
Wisconsin.
Dang, yeah, I have some family up there. They were. I heard. There was like a lot of snow coming through recently too. It was 80 degrees here yesterday. It was ridiculous. It's insane. I don't know what's happening. How it's so cold up there and like freaking hot down here. Yeah, because I'm in Tennessee, so it's like it's not that much further south. I don't know. It's not like I'm in Florida or something.
Close enough.
Close enough. Yeah.
Well, if I can help you out anytime, Andrew, if you just need to shoot the shit or something, man. I don't know if you're on the Discord or whatever.
I'm on Jacobs.
Yeah.
You're on Jacobs?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll send you my phone number, dude. If you ever just want to call or something, if you just got shit you want about, hit me up, dude.
Sure, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Chad, I dropped mine in the private chat too. If you ever want to, my email and my number too. If you ever want to text or something too, both of you can have it. So, yeah, if you just drop yours in the private chat, Andrew can get it. And there you go. Sweet. I might have to run as well, but you guys can continue on, or I don't know.
Thanks, Jason.
Oh yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for opening up this conversation too. And you got on here, and then when you started talking about that, I was like, man, Andrew just got real. This whole live stream started off like like you said, kind of this argument between two people, and it's like, hey, there's I don't know. It just thanks for doing that. Thanks for I guess helping us focus too.
Mhm.
So,
Mm.
but all right, guys. Well, I'm gonna head out here. So, Andrew, I guess I don't know if you can end it. I'm not sure. Are you heading off, or are you gonna hang on here a little bit?
I don't know. I might hang on. Still have some more
Okay.
thoughts and tirades.
Okay. All right. I don't know how to. I don't know if I can give you like the way to let people in.
It's in the chat
The
already. Oh, you mean like the open the door?
Yeah, because Jacob gave me access to his thing, and so I know it'll keep going at least for a little while if I leave. But if you get if someone joins, I don't know if you click. I'm trying to look at the settings to see if there's a way to do that, but I don't know.
All right, guys. Thank you, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
It's calling time. All right,
All right.
man.
Yep. Thank you.
God bless.
You as well.
I see you, Chad. Okay. Yeah, because I thought you could see the thing down there when people joined, but let me see. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess. Yes, Chad's not an admin. I don't want to click the wrong thing either. That's what I'm worried about doing.
Don't worry.
All right.
I won't keep you.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think that does anything. All right. Well, I'm gonna head off though, but yeah, hopefully other people can join if they hop on. I don't know. I mean, I'll drop the link in here one more time because Chad said it wasn't working when he tried to join. Maybe it changes after a little bit. I'm not sure. But all right, and then I'll head off and you can keep going while you want. So, all right, man, it was good to talk to you. And yeah, you got my number, so we'll keep in touch. So, all right, see you, Andrew.
Have
Thanks
a good
again.
one. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for popping on. I'm very glad that we can have these conversations here. And that we can continue to be a community even online. What I really hate is like people learn this side about you and it becomes like the defining thing about the relationship. It's like, oh, are you doing okay today? It's like, I don't want to be reminded of that. And you're reminding me that this whole side of me is killing my relationships. But the ability for these relationships to exist in this little corner and for it to not impact the community as much or be so startling is a very good thing. I don't think so, Richard. I can't see how I can. Thanks for trying to. I think a problem that, like, I don't know, I'll say normal people have is that they hear people like, I don't know, me and Chad and Jason talk about this stuff and talk about how it's dishonest or external versus internal, and they think that that's some sort of thing that they can tap into or reference. And if anything else, depression is embodied. It's practically the only thing that's embodied while you're in it. Like, there was a weird point where I would feel like I was walking in slow motion. And I'd touch things, and then, like, I'd feel them seconds later. Part of what pulled me out of that was just that it was so weird. I dealt with depression before, and that was completely new. So it was kind of easier for me to say, hey, that's not you. But a lot of the time that depression is like completely you. Like, it's like you're talking about this is always a struggle, because I was about to say it's like your depression is the only thing that's real. But when you're in it, it's not your depression, it's just you. It's not even you, it's just how it is. Talking about this stuff that in a way that's comprehensible to most people is, I don't know. Yeah. Honestly, I think I probably shouldn't talk about this anymore because a lot of this needs to be I can't just talk at a screen and everyone thinks that this problem has been solved. Like, hey, Andrew pointed out a problem and then he tried solving it himself or something. It's not. This should be a like half of what this little corner is doing. Like, we're founded on the meaning crisis. We should be exploring the meaning crisis. My whatever 1 hour, 30-minute-ish thingamajig is not sufficient. I'm halfway, I don't know, I'm kind of out of my depression. I don't think the way I used to when I was depressed. Even talking to me or to people like, I'm not going to speak for them, but talking to people who are out of depression, I think is not an accurate representation of what talking to people with depression is like, or how you should talk to people who are out of depression or anything. I do think we need to address the whole wanting to feel depressed again phenomena, because I know that this little corner has given me, you could say, embodiment, has given me a tradition. And the only reason why I don't go and be depressed is because I know I can't do that and hold to my tradition or to those embodied practices. But I think even there I'm lying, because I know that I'm practicing these traditions to keep myself from being depressed. But I keep holding those two in opposition. When I'm not doing it, I am thinking, am I going to be depressed again? Am I, is it enough? And when I am doing it, oh, great, I'm practicing these traditions, these practices. And I should be out of that opposition entirely. And I don't know how, because I don't think we've explicated enough of the meaning crisis. I said I was going to end it, so thanks everyone for popping on. It is great being a part of this online community.